89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on the 11 o'clock hour of BPR. Boston and the rest of New England is finally beginning to experience the long-promised Trump-induced immigration raids, dubbed Operation Patriot 2.0. We'll start our week opening phone and text lines, getting your reactions. Everyone believes serious criminals should face consequences. That's not who's been targeted in ICE raids. What's your reaction to ICE coming to a neighborhood near you?
I'm Marjorie Egan, then it's CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, Michael Curry, talking about the work needed to hold the state health systems together as federal funding dries up. And we'll ask him to put on his NAACP hat to reflect on the 2-year anniversary of the Supreme Court striking down affirmative action in higher ed. It's all ahead on BPR, GBH, and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. A federal appeals court panel has denied President Trump's effort to overturn a jury verdict against him in a case involving writer E. Jean Carroll. A jury had determined that Trump defamed Carroll in 2022. This was after the same jury found Trump liable for sexually abusing her in a store in 1996. Trump has been ordered to pay more than $83 million in damages. The federal appeals court panel rejected Trump's call for presidential immunity. Police in Jerusalem say 6 people were killed by 2 Palestinian gunmen at a busy bus stop in Jerusalem today. Hamas praised the attack but did not take responsibility. An Israeli security officer and civilians shot and killed the 2 attackers. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar says international leaders must recognize the danger Israel faces from terrorists.
I urge the responsible leaders around the world who recognize the clear danger in a terrorist state. Now is the time to speak out and make your voice heard.
Yesterday, Israel said it was seriously considering President Trump's new proposal for a Gaza ceasefire. The Prime Minister of France is expected to lose today's vote of confidence in the French Parliament. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports from Paris. The vote was called to draw attention to the country's rising debt.
François Bayrou told Parliament the burgeoning debt is a Damocles sword that threatens France. Bayrou wants to cut some $51 billion from the budget and is seeking support, but his cuts are not popular, and the far right and far left, which have the largest blocs in Parliament, say they will vote against him. If President Macron's 5th prime minister since 2017 falls, he'll have a difficult time getting approval for a new one, as Macron no longer has a majority in Parliament. The collapse of this government would further weaken Macron at a time when France and Europe must be strong to confront a resurgent Russia and China and President Trump's America First policies. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
A peace vigil that stood outside of the White House for nearly 45 years is largely gone. The Trump administration dismantled it over the weekend. NPR's Kristen Wright reports.
Federal law enforcement officials took down the peace vigil across from the White House on Sunday. The small demonstration had been there since 1981 as a call for nuclear disarmament and world peace. All these years, activists stayed at the vigil around the clock in peaceful protest. But at a White House event on Friday, a correspondent for a conservative network told President Trump the vigil's tent was an eyesore. Trump has been ordering the clearing of tents and homeless encampments around the city. He directed the removal of the vigil, and a White House statement to the Associated Press said it was a hazard. Those who'd been manning it, though, say their First Amendment rights have been violated. Kristen Wright, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 87 points. It's NPR.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. Voters in Boston go to the polls for the city's preliminary elections tomorrow, and if recent polling is correct, incumbent Mayor Michelle Wu is expected to handily come out on top. However, inquiring minds would like to know how big her margin of victory will be and whether her main challenger, Josh Kraft, stays in the race through November. At last check, Wu had a 50-point lead over Kraft. Meanwhile, Boston's at-large city city council race has been garnering lots of attention as well. All four incumbent at-large councilors, Ruth C. Louis-Jean, Erin Murphy, Julia Mejia, and Henry Santana, are all running for re-election, but 6 challengers have jumped into the race, including former District 3 Councilor Frank Baker, who's attempting a comeback after deciding against running for re-election in 2023. And if you're wondering what all the commotion was in Harvard Square on Friday, it was a surprise visit by YouTube sensation iShowSpeed. Hundreds of students and onlookers packed the square as Darren iShowSpeed Watkins Jr. showed up, sparking a frenzy of selfies, chants, and impromptu performances. The 20-year-old influencer is one of the internet's most recognizable streamers. Under the name iShowSpeed, he's built a following of tens of millions on YouTube for his high-energy antics, his offbeat humor, and unpredictable live stream stunts. The Crimson reports that Watkins was surrounded by bodyguards while in Harvard Square, and the crowd went wild when he broke into dance. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Doris Duke Foundation, which aims to support the well-being of people and the planet for a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Hey, Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Going to be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. We're going to be out in Springfield at the NEPM studios next week, Monday and Tuesday. Governor Deval Patrick, and the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell, and more will join us out there. Hi, Jim.
They'll be in studio. It's pretty exciting. So the headline on CNN just about 3 minutes ago at 11:03 was ICE conducting Boston raids. As you probably know, Mayor Wu has been one of the most outspoken critics of the Trump administration's immigration actions, claiming the feds are fear-mongering and routinely calling out the ways their actions are making cities and towns less safe. And now, as I just said, the Trump administration has begun what they call Patriot 2.0, series of immigration crackdowns around New England, right here in Massachusetts, calling out Wu by name, incidentally. And by the way, we should mention the runoff. The preliminary is tomorrow. We hope if you're a Boston voter, you participate. The administration has been steadily ramping up here since the start of the year. In March, ICE arrested 370 immigrants in the state, of which 165 were so-called collateral arrests, or undocumented immigrants who were not targeted but were just in the area. In May, ICE arrested nearly 1,500 immigrants in the state. Immigration officials say so-called sanctuary places like the Boston Trust Act, like the Boston Trust Act, make it more difficult and dangerous for federal agents to do their work. Politicians like Wu say it's the masked and unidentified squads of federal agents making the region less safe. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. Are you a little incredulous? I mean, intellectually, you may have thought this was happening. They've said repeatedly. The border czar Homan has said it. Trump has said it. The acting head of ICE, Todd Lyons, has said it. But they're here. How are you responding? Are you responding at all? How do you feel about their presence in our midst? 877-301-8970. And purportedly, the presence is just going to be ramped up in the days and weeks ahead. You know, I knew this was coming. It is rather incredible. Let's do the worst case scenario, one of the safest cities in America, Wu said it's the safest, that ICE is coming in because of this threat to our safety that all of these undocumented immigrants allegedly pose to the people of Boston and New England, you know?
Well, again, if someone is a rapist or a murderer and has eluded authorities, that's one thing. But what you read about people are people that came into the country illegally, which is a civil offense, getting herded off like they are rapists and murderers. The Globe has a story about this woman, 58-year-old woman who's been here for 20 years. Yeah, did she come into the country illegally? Yes, she did. But she gets swept off the street. Her family doesn't know where she is. Her lawyer doesn't know where she is. It takes them days to find out. People are getting taken on chartered planes out of Hanscom Field to faraway states where conservative judges may be less sympathetic than maybe the people in Massachusetts are. And, a lot of these people, as you said before, their criminal offense is coming into the country illegally. They're not murderers and rapists or pedophiles or any of these things. They're people that came into the country illegally. This particular woman, she was going, as so many people were, to a federal immigration office in Revere to update her visa application. She came here from El Salvador 20 years ago. Yeah, she came here illegally. But are the 58-year-old mothers, with children and grandchildren, are these the people we want to be deporting? I think that's the problem. It's like nannies and construction workers and people that work for lawn services. I think if there were a lot of major murderers and pedophiles, we would have heard about it, but we haven't.
And also as background of this, that there the National Guard threats around the country. ICE is the issue here, not National Guard, at least at the moment. I assume most people have seen this incredibly juvenile yet scary image created by Trump that he posted. What a fool. A dangerous fool this man is. He has himself, an AI-generated photo of himself as Robert Duvall's Colonel Kilgore. I assume most of you have seen in Apocalypse Now, looking tough with the helicopters in the background. And it says Shipocalypse Now, meaning Chicago. By the way, Chicago's an American city. I don't know if people know that.
Yeah.
You may have relatives or friends there. This is what the President of the United States is suggesting about a city in his country. And the line when he posted it is, this shows how totally demented this human being is. I love the smell of deportations in the morning. He is a really sick, sadistic soul.
Well,
and again, it isn't quite at that level here, but it's moving in that direction. And we want to know what your reaction is, if you're planning on doing anything. Neighborhood groups in Chicago are talking about organizing when they hear about a raid or National Guard people in a neighborhood. That minimum, they're going to be a presence. I don't know if they can stop anything. Are we doing anything here?
Well, once again, this is such a big lie. This doesn't have anything to do with safety and crime, anything any more than anti-Semitism was the reason he went after all these schools.
You're right.
This is like a show of power, a show of I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take over. They're not solving crime problems. They've taken millions and millions of dollars away from police departments and law enforcement around the country. So if they really were worried about solving crime in places like Chicago and Washington, D.C., you know what they do? They'd help the cities there hire more cops, because a lot of times cities can't afford to hire enough police officers or recruit enough police officers. So that would be a step in the right direction. But it's just another ridiculous pretext. And the thing about this, again, the immigration thing, is that I don't think most people think, okay, you came here illegally, you crossed the border illegally 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or you were one of the Afghan interpreters that came to the country after getting out of Afghanistan because you'd be killed by the Taliban over there.
And after you were promised by the United States that we'd protect you.
That's a good one. Do you think we should be deporting those people back to Afghanistan? But you don't expect that those people are going to be swept up by people in masks, thrown into the back of cars, and taken off to who knows where. Usually you get a chance to call your lawyer or maybe call your family, even if you're arrested for murdering somebody. There's no due process. And one last thing, there used to be a slogan, we had in the United States of America, better that 10, and it was sexist, but that's okay. Better that 10 guilty men go free, that one innocent man go to prison. We kind of lost that idea because so many of these people, some of them are here totally legally and they're swept up anyway. So that's the problem.
Legally and providing services to all of us, by the way. And, even if you don't care, if you've decided they're here illegally, they haven't committed any serious crimes, the vast majority, but I don't care. How do you feel about having ICE agents in your community willy-nilly? Again, not with any, because there's any specific crisis. Or if you're in Chicago, a National Guards people. I know I say this every day, so I apologize. The passivity of the American people in the face of this autocrat is just unbelievable to me. And the more you give, the more he'll take. It's AB in Worcester. I just got back last week from visiting my family in the South. This is a text. They were shocked to learn about all the ICE activity here. The rest of the nation, especially red states, have no clue about the reality of what is happening. Jill texts, curious timing of these ICE raids today in Boston. the day before the mayoral primary. I mean, in fairness, both Wu and Kraft, her primary opponent, have both been very critical. Obviously, Wu, much higher profile, that incredible performance in Washington, which obviously was not only important for America, I think it obviously helped her campaign. Not that's why she did it. She was told to come down there by the committee.
A lot of theories that the reason the National Guard are being deployed to all these cities like Washington and Chicago is a prelude to their being dispatched there again, so people will be afraid to come out and vote in the 2026 elections.
Well, he said there were didn't he say the other day their problem with some of the machines? We may have to send the military out. I mean, it is really. By the way, just to get you in the mood, if you're not already, and then we'll take your calls. Here's Tom Homan, the incredible border czar, tough guy. I mean, real tough guy, and the tougher he is, and by the way, most of the people who act tough, they're doing it for Trump. This guy seems to get off on it on his own. Here's a little bit of what he had to say to Jake Tapper on CNN yesterday.
You can expect action in most sanctuary cities across the country. President Trump's prioritized sanctuary cities because sanctuary cities knowingly release illegal alien public safety threats to the streets every day. So we got to send additional resources to the problem areas, which are sanctuary cities.
Public safety threats in one of the safest cities in the United States, if not the safest city.
And by the way, when you look at a lot of the people that get picked up, you see accused much more than convicted. You see people who've been charged with things and the charges were dismissed, which makes you wonder whether they did anything besides come over the country, across the border illegally, or if they did anything more than looking like they might have come over across the border illegally, if they're dark-skinned people. I mean, that's the other thing. There's obviously racial profiling all over the place.
Well, let me quote myself one more time. I'll try not to quote myself again. The highest profile individual, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, once again, as I've said repeatedly, when Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, spoke in the Oval Office with Trump there, and between every sentence she would look in the direction of Trump, she listed a whole host of crimes he had committed, none of which her Department of Justice, which had she charged him with. None.
You see the piece in the Globe about nursing homes? If your parents or grandparents are in a nursing home, or you may be soon headed to one yourself, they're really in big trouble because so many of the people that work in nursing homes are women, mostly women. Well, they're men
all
too.
Rapists and murderers, by the way.
They're people that came over the border illegally and are working in nursing homes. So it's wild what's going on. Victoria and Lynn, what do you think?
Hi, Victoria.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
We can, perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm a local clergy person. I live here in Lynn, and I've been involved with the resistance for a long time. And so hearing you frame it, or having people be surprised that ICE is sort of suddenly around is very strange to me, because I've been involved with lucid.org and Neighbor to Neighbor here. Lynn has been already terrified. People are literally afraid to leave their homes. We have had to set up systems of mutual aid to get people, because ICE has targeted food pantries.
Yeah.
It has targeted schools. So we've been setting up groups to identify ICE agents and then do community rapid response. And, at this point, we understand it's harm reduction. We know we can't save everyone, but it's been going on. And there, for instance, my congregation sponsors or supports a free program for children, summer program for children in the city of Lynn. They couldn't get any kids, because the parents were too terrified to bring them in. So ICE has been marauding around our city for a long time, and they've just gotten more money. And now our latest, I'm going back to another training in a week, because they keep changing their tactics. They keep changing their vehicles. So we have to catch up and keep responding. And they just have a lot more money now. Their trucks look real fancy. That's our tax dollars at work. So I just wanted to say that for people who are surprised, this is not a new thing. Our cities have already been living in terror, and some of your own neighbors have been.
Victoria, are you comfortable saying what your church is if people wanted to reach out to find out how you've organized in Lynn, or would you prefer not?
Happy to. Well,
what's the name?
I serve the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn, UUCGL.
Great.
And our congregation is part of a really, really powerful Essex County coalition, interfaith coalition called ECHO, Essex County Community Organization, ECCO.org. And so we do a lot of our organizing through ECHO.
Hey, Victoria, thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for the call. We really appreciate it.
You know, according to the Globe, all 8 major detention facilities under contract to ICE in Massachusetts are now at capacity, and the largest facility in New England under contract with ICE is the Plymouth County Correctional Facility in Massachusetts.
New Hampshire's been very cooperative, too. The only
New
one
Hampshire and Maine has been very cooperative. And there's a big recruiting thing going on right now. They have these signs, you know, America needs you. There's this ICE hiring website, all capital letters, under a star-spangled picture of Uncle Sam. And you get a $50,000 signing bonus, up to, I should say, offering signing bonuses of up to $50,000. So when you see these guys in masks, and I guess there are some women there too, and with their looking kind of scary, you wonder what kind of person wants to go join that force. That makes me kind of nervous, too.
Well, somebody needs money, too, who may not be a horrible person, who decides I'm in need. By the way, I didn't give you the full picture. When Trump posted that infantile but dangerous photo of himself as Kilgore in Apocalypse Now, he didn't just have the quote, I love the smell of deportations in the morning. He says, Chicago's about to find out why it's called the Department of War. Now, again, I want to repeat, I know you know this. This is a city in the United States where he is the president, meaning it's part of his country. And Chicago is about to find out why it's called the Department of War. Now, for those of you out there saying, well, there's a real crime problem in Chicago, which there is, and they need the help of the feds, that's a debate. The local leaders say they don't. What do you think of that approach? Chicago's about to find out why it's called the Department of War. I mean, just really,
he better go into one of the red states and red cities that have much worse crime problems than Washington and Chicago pretty soon, because you're losing credibility on this front. I mean, it's obviously not about crime, because otherwise he'd be in Memphis, Tennessee.
You're totally
he'd
right.
be in Birmingham, Alabama. He'd be in St. Louis. He'd be in places where there's much more serious crime than in those places. The places he's targeted are places run by Democrats, often politicians of color.
Let's go to Beth in a car. Hi, Beth. Thank you for calling us. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I am on the fence regarding the ICE raid because I work and drive around Boston and work in people's homes all throughout Boston, and I have been for years. This year, I do not feel safe in some communities when I park my car to go to a customer's home, because there are individuals that are hiding their faces behind ski masks. And in the summertime when it's 95 degrees, you see people in shorts and sleeveless shirts wearing ski masks because they do not want to be identified. I don't think that's right.
Are you talking about people, like ICE people, or regular Joe people?
No, just regular individuals that might not want to be identified.
Hey, Beth, how do you know that it's just regular individuals rather than an ICE agent who has no identification
or an
wearing
American
a mask?
Citizen?
And that's one of the problems. I mean, how do you know who they are?
Right. No, that's my level of discomfort now, and if it's ICE agents walking around doing it, it's not giving any feeling of comfort.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. You think there's a real problem, but this is not the way to handle it. Is that a fair summary of what you're saying?
Maybe. I just don't like the mask. I don't care whomever you are. If you're here illegally wearing a mask because you don't want to be identified, I don't like ICE agents wearing masks. It's an all-around very unsafe feeling.
I'm with you on that, by the way. I'm sure there's an exception.
I'm just curious, Beth, what part of Boston are you seeing this in?
Well, I work throughout all of Boston, so it could be any community. And I'm going to say Roxbury, Mattapan, they are
So
That's where I've seen most of it.
so you're seeing people in the black community with masks on.
Beth, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Anonymous texter. As a green card holder, I'm horrified by all of this. My family is terrified I could get caught up in raids, even though I am a law-abiding citizen.
Well, that's the fear. I mean, how many times have you heard this summer from people whose families live in different countries? We have a friend whose family's in Iran. She was very nervous about going there. I have a family member who's came from Lebanon, afraid to go back there. They won't be able to get back in the country, afraid of being picked up. They're citizens. They're citizens, and they're worried because they are dark-skinned.
John in the car. Hi, John. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Sure.
I think we liberals have a major problem here. We want certain laws enforced, such as gun laws, but we don't want certain laws enforced concerning immigration. What we're looking for here is justice tempered with mercy. But that hasn't been part of our argument. And our argument, as a result, sounds to the right as self-defeating. We need to either change our laws or we need to change our argument.
Well, John, we're not following due process, which is one of the pillars of our laws. I mean, I think that's the major issue. Before you're going to send somebody to Uganda or South Sudan, they should have an opportunity to defend themselves. I think that's a pretty good argument. I'm just asking that they follow the law, which they're not.
Well, John, there's also one more argument. We're running a little low on time, and thank you for your call. The reason some of us call for gun reform is because guns are killing the American people, including tons of our children. The vast majority of people who are here, quote, illegally, who are undocumented, are serving us in so many ways, whether they're making sure we have vegetables and fruit on our table, taking care of our parents. And as Marjorie said at the top, for those few who are committing serious crimes, they should be held accountable, period. I think they are totally different situations, but thanks for the call.
You know, there's a straw man here created too. The notion that if you are arrested for raping somebody and you are arraigned, I mean, you may get a very high bail. You may not get out, or depending on the crime, you may not get out at all, pending trial. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. Anyway, coming after a quick break, more of your calls and texts. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The ICE raids are intensifying all around Massachusetts. How do you feel about it? Do you think this is what you voted for? Did you expect the nannies to be getting shipped to Texas? 877-301-8970 is the number to call. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM.
Wood from boats that once carried migrants has been repurposed.
Everybody says it's impossible to make a violin with this wood.
But the instruments were made in an Italian prison, and now they appear on stage in Milan's famed Teatro alla Scala. The Orchestra of the Sea, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Andrew Gunn, Fashioning the World, a retrospective of the Singaporean fashion designer. You can learn more at pem.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the increased ICE presence and activity in Boston and New England as a whole, and what your reaction is to this. And I have to say, I was thrilled that we started the conversation with Victoria from that congregation in Greater Lynn, which is actually doing something rather than whining like the rest of us do about something that we find to be an untenable situation, including our leaders. Remember, these people, we elected people in Boston, Mayor Wu. We elected Governor Healey. They don't want this. But Donald Trump, tough guy Donald Trump, has decided it's politically advantageous, not to mention the fact that being cruel makes him happy too.
Well, we're picking people up off the streets who may or may not have done anything wrong and shipping them off in airplanes to faraway states without their families or anybody knowing about this. People are entitled to due process. You murder somebody in Boston, the cops pick you up, you go, you're arraigned, you're not going to get out of jail if you kill somebody.
You know what you have to ask a lawyer? I've said this on the air a lot of times, and I haven't thought to ask Nancy Gertner, Judge Gertner, or the Attorney General. I asked the Attorney General, I guess next week, or whenever it is, that she's with us next Monday or Tuesday, is like Ozturk, for example. I've said this. When masked men with no identification accost you on the street and kidnap you, essentially, which is happening all over the country, and you fight back and do harm to that individual, are you immune from prosecution because you had a reasonable belief that you're being accosted,
That's a good question.
assaulted?
I would guess not.
And what is the reason if a cop in a local every jurisdiction in the country needs to have a name tag with his or her, their name, and their face uncovered, why do ICE agents get the right and privilege to hide out, to create additional fear? I'm with that woman, by the way.
Getting away with it. They're just getting away with it.
Right, but isn't it, when you see someone with a mask, isn't it terrifying? When you see somebody walking down the street, because you do have no idea who they are. And by the way, the people picketing outside, remember, outside
Brigham.
And outside Healey's house in Arlington.
With masks.
Were masks, yeah.
No. And by the way, I want to read a couple of texts because there are people on the other side.
Yep.
Jim, don't you realize this is what Americans want? They love this. Hard to fight miscreants. I know, says Nick, I know people are upset in our community, but the country did vote for this. Immigration was a huge topic.
Wait, stop right there. If Donald Trump had said, we're going to catch a few hardened criminals who are here illegally, and the other, I'm making up a number, 75 to 80%, we're going to capture because they crossed the border illegally, and even though they were there to help their family or escape persecution, you think people would have said that was fine? He lied about what he was doing. He continues to lie about who he's going after. So stop with this. This is what they voted for.
He did talk about mass deportations, but I don't think people have in mind.
Mass deportation of the bad guys.
Exactly.
Let's go to Lauren in Boston. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to the show. Hello.
Hi. Good morning.
Hi.
So I am as appalled and as horrified as you both are on every single point. I'm grateful that I'm a white gal, but I'm horrified for anyone that isn't white. And I have a large pile of liberal friends, and they have mentioned that I listen to you guys every day to sort of get my consolidated news, given my busy schedule, and I listen to a podcast at night if I miss you during the day.
Oh, thank you.
Most of can't get it. When you guys were on vacation, I was lost.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, sure. So, but here's my thing. One is one point and then one question. So I work at MGH, and I was driving to the hospital on a 90-degree day, and there was this dude walking down the sidewalk it's 90-plus degrees, 90-plus, in a black mask with a helmet, an all-black outfit. And I was horrified. I was looking for a gun somewhere, and I was waiting for the guy to pull out a gun and start shooting. He looked that bizarre. So there's just that side note of people with these masks.
What's the question?
But the question is, and I kind of missed the gal from Lynn because I was calling in, but most of my friends are shrugging their shoulders and saying, I just don't know. I don't feel like there's anything that I can do. I voted, and I'm in a blue state. That didn't help us. And writing the letters and protesting seems to, only do so much, but not enough.
So you want to know what people should do. That's your question.
Well, I'll tell you what they're doing up there. They have community groups. They show support for people. They have a community network, apparently, that when they hear word that they're ICE agents in a particular part of the community, they gather there to show support. Now, and as she says, in not all times does it produce a desired result. And maybe, by the way, it won't produce a desired result. They're still going to snatch somebody, but there may be a kid or maybe a relative, a spouse, or somebody who you provide support and protection to. So I think the notion, Lauren, and thanks for your call, the notion of at least showing that people care with their bodies, not just on Twitter, is a really important step in the right direction, while our leaders, for the most part, are going to court to try to stop this.
Hey, a little bit of breaking news.
What's that?
An appeals court has denied Donald Trump's effort to toss the $83 million judgment in the E. Jean Carroll case. She's the woman who said he sexually assaulted her. Civil jury ordered him to pay her. He appealed. A federal appeals court upheld the jury's $83.3 million judgment in a defamation lawsuit.
Yeah, nobody cares about that either, right? Nobody cares that he, again, we've said it 1,000 times, what a jury there found, the court found that he was responsible for is under Massachusetts law, had it happened here, is defined as rape. Did it cost him one vote? Did it cost him one vote, do you think?
I don't know. But they did dismiss his efforts to appeal the case by invoking presidential immunity, so that was good, too. I like that as well. Okay, well, I guess the ICE raids are going to be continuing here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for quite some time.
Well, I'm not sure of that. There's litigation. We'll see.
Coming up after a quick break, Governor Healey's vaccination prescription to all Massachusetts residents she's going to make sure people can get vaccinated and get it paid for. We'll talk through the latest at the intersection of politics and health with Michael Curry, head of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Learn something new.
I want to start with how crowds of people can act like fluids.
Yes.
What?
I mean, this is physics, so I love it.
Make a connection.
I have no idea who they voted for. I don't care. This tailgate in particular, everybody's welcome.
Dig a bit deeper.
We're often looking for a small secular liturgy for our lives, and poetry can provide that sometimes.
Stay curious with All Things Considered from NPR News.
This afternoon at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Chevalier Theatre in Medford Square, presenting an intimate evening with Celtic Thunder. Saturday evening, September 20th at 8. Tickets and more information at chevaliertheatre.com. And MIT Federal Credit Union, committed to helping homeowners make use of the equity in their home by offering personalized solutions with an MIT FCU home equity loan. NMLS number 699225, federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to BPR and NEPM. I am Jim Browdy, and she is Marjorie Egan. We're streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. We're joined now on Zoom by Michael Curry, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, on the board of the National NAACP. Happy birthday, Michael Curry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Michael, we were just talking with our listeners about the ICE kind of machine surging all around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What do you think?
Disturbing. It is disturbing that people's constitutional rights are being violated. It's disturbing that people with mass, with no clear authority, with no clear justification, are interrupting and engaging citizens and detaining them. And I think the stories are very apparent. Their mothers, their children, their fathers, they're working folks, they're people who are contributing to our economy, and then all of a sudden their lives are disrupted. And what we're seeing in New England is a surge. The more we speak up, protest, resist, and through policy, the more they target enforcement in this area. It is as Stacy Abrams said, signs of an autocracy.
You know, Michael, you have done work that is extraordinary. We've talked to you about it 1,000 times through this Health Equity Compact that you founded, and now I think has scores of leaders of color in the healthcare field who are working on Beacon Hill and in the community to address, I guess, make transparent health disparities, health inequities, and then try to address them. Well, Donald Trump's dealing with them too by defunding all research into these areas. What does that mean for what you're doing and what people like you who have similar interests are doing throughout the country?
I think it undermines it. And of course, you know, when I think I'll start my classes this Friday, I teach at Suffolk University in the Moakley program, a health policy course. And I'll walk through the history of health, the history of public health, how we are trying to address health disparities. I'll talk about the efforts of the federal government under Health and Human Services and in healthy campaigns in 2010 and 2020 to address health disparities. I'll walk through the fact that national health expenditure in this country grew by some 7.5% or 4.9 trillion through 2023. That's $14,570 per person. The impact on Medicaid, the costs are going up. So we understand that if you address the underlying issues to cost, you're addressing health disparities. Those folks who are desperately sick, who are dying, if we solve for their disease, we solve for their the conditions that are making them sick, then we can address these cost implications. So I think to your question, Jim, we need to realize that these research efforts across the country, these NIH-funded grants are trying to crack the code on what makes people sick or what makes them have higher rates of morbidity and mortality. And although they may be targeted at Latino, Hispanic men or African-American women who are disparately having adverse outcomes in their pregnancy, the implications are for all of us, whether it's cost, how do we prevent unnecessary deaths and cost in the system, but it's also the things we're learning from that research benefits all people, all women, all men, because we are going after where disease is existing most. And when we learn lessons from that, we can apply it. So it's disturbing. And whether you're going after Harvard, Columbia, or the universities, or whether you're going after particular studies, we'll all be impacted by that.
Yeah, it seems to me though that in most other parts of the country, where this effort is not as advanced as you and your colleagues have made it here, they're in big trouble. You're able to advocate for policy changes because you have the data to back it up. I'm not saying there's not more research to be done, but you've shared with us a ton of stuff from our city, state, region, etc. For places that are just getting into the act, it sort of nips it in the don't have the backup information to make the case other than rhetorically to their elected representatives, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this research is all over the country. I think how different states and different institutions will respond to this moment of backlash on DEI. And DEI is such a broad category that it includes everything health equity, right? So when you are going after certain populations and trying to provide them with the research that'll make them healthier, they're going after those programs. The result of that is that the research that comes out of Massachusetts or these other states will be curtailed. It'll be withdrawn. It'll be defunded. And we're fortunate that we're in Massachusetts, where at least because of this governor, because of the academic community here, we're thinking about other ways to fund research, the legislature, other ways to fund research so that we don't lose that groundbreaking work that's being done. But to your point, Jim, in other parts of the country, they'll quite frankly just let it wither. They'll let it die. And they'll adopt this philosophy that if you're doing research on specific populations impacted by disease, that you are being discriminatory against white folks. And I think that is a setback for this country. I'm deeply hurt and concerned for the nation. And I know that I just sat in a meeting this week with members of the Health Equity Compact. We anticipate to fight for what we know is right. Health equity is the right way to go. in Massachusetts and for the rest of the country.
We're talking to Michael Curry.
You know, before we move on to RFK Jr., you mentioned before Stacy Abrams. People may recall she ran against Kemp in Georgia was she running for governor, I think? Governor, I think. A lot of people think that race there was cheating going on in that race. But in any case, you mentioned her talking about authoritarianism. You sent us something. What is it that people should be looking at? What'd she do?
Well, once she went viral, and I think everyone should take a look at it because she points out how this stuff works with campaigns to push autocracy on government, on communities, and on nations. And I can't walk through all 10, but I think she literally lays out the roadmap that sort of parallels Project 2025. If you prevent the right to vote, if you make people comfortable with violating their rights and snatching people off the street, if the truth doesn't matter and the facts don't matter anymore, if data doesn't matter, it is the blueprint for what we've seen throughout history in other parts of the world, where then people saw presidents who wouldn't leave office and resisted leaving office and abused their powers. I think if you have not watched it yet, for any of your listeners, I think you have to pay attention to her 10 points on how this autocracy plays out in society. It is literally disturbing to see how real it is for us today.
You know, we're going to talk to Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett about the concrete impacts of some of RFK Jr.'s behaviors. Over the weekend, his family, which has been pretty courageous, I mean, we remember Caroline Kennedy, his cousin, called him a predator right before the committee vote. Kerry Kennedy, his sister, and Joe Kennedy, who's going to be with us, I think, next week or the week after, the former Congress, the third?
Joe Kennedy the third.
Third, yeah, but he's going to be with us on the show in the next week or so for a variety of things he's working on, including this. Put out statements saying he should resign. As courageous as they are, it seems to me that the only hope of getting rid of Kennedy is if the Republicans who were appalled at the vaccine hearing the other day have the courage to answer the questions as to whether or not they regret their vote and think he should disappear. Is that a fair political analysis?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's going to have to be a groundwell of concern out of the Republican Party with the direction that Health and Human Services is taking, and particularly as it relates to vaccines, but so many other areas with the termination and firing of critical staff within the agency. I will tell you, Joe Kennedy is a good friend of mine. And I will tell you, his compass is well adjusted for this moment. I would listen to Joe. Joe knows what he's talking about, and he was a great partner to community health, to Massachusetts when he was in that seat in Congress. So I am listening to Joe.
By the way, he'll be with us on the 19th, Friday the 19th at noon, Congressman Kennedy.
So, Michael, you're the CEO of the Mass League Community Health Centers. Maura Healey said everyone who wants to get a vaccine in Massachusetts can get it and get it paid for by insurance. You think that's going to work out okay?
Oh, yeah. I think for one, kudos to our governor and the folks who stood with her. I did not have an opportunity to be there with her, but Robbie Goldstein, the commissioner of DPH, my good friend Kahame Mahania, the new secretary of Health and Human Services. We're taking the steps that we need to in Massachusetts to protect access to vaccines. And it mirrors what other states are doing. There's a collection of states on the West Coast that have come together to protect vaccines. New York has taken a similar initiative to protect vaccines. We no longer are in a place where the data, the guidance is reliable coming out of the federal government. We're going to have to now rely on states and clusters of states to give us guidance as healthcare providers, as insurers. And I think mandating and requiring that health plans continue to provide that coverage despite what the federal government is saying is a bold move for governors like Governor Healey.
You know, not only governors, advocates. You co-wrote a piece in the Globe, I don't know, a week or so ago, with several other healthcare leaders who one would argue have different constituencies and often different interests when they go to Beacon Hill or make public policy or advocate for public policy. And the basic notion was it's time to put aside some of those differences and do collaborative work in the face of these immense threats to personal and public health. No one can disagree with the rhetorical statement, but that's easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are deep divisions oftentimes on policy among the different parts of our healthcare sector. That's natural. That's what happens when your health plans and hospitals and teaching community hospitals and community health centers and pharma, life sciences, we can disagree on the how, right? We often disagree on some of that. But I think what came out in that piece that I had the privilege of writing with Manny Lopes from Fallon Health, Steve Walsh from the Massachusetts Health and Hospital Association, and Amy from Healthcare for All, was this notion that in Massachusetts, one, I think the great thing about Massachusetts is we're all friends, right? So it makes it easier to do policy when you disagree with people, when you've had a pre-existing relationship with them. Two, that we know what the ultimate mission and goal of in Massachusetts, which is to keep people healthy, to make care affordable, to make sure there's access. And as long as we can agree on those three, then we can work together. We can do great things with government, both local, state, and federal government, if they were willing to really respond to the needs of Massachusetts residents. So I think what that piece was meant to say is, we're fired up and ready to go to work together. And we want to work with all parties that are interested in meeting those same objectives to make sure that we make sure Massachusetts remains healthy despite all that's going on around us.
Can I just go back for 1 second? I just thought of something about this health equity thing we were talking about a minute ago and the defunding. Do you worry that even well-intentioned places that were involved, not in research, but in actually making change to reduce health disparities, if they're dependent upon federal funding, are going to be less likely to move ahead with those changes for fear that the whole ball of wax is at risk? Should they do the right thing?
That is the absolute risk that we are facing right now. And it's all of us. It's the academic institutions, it's health centers, hospitals, health plans, it's finance industry. All of us are being put in this position. If we say something, if we have the wrong words in our applications or on our federal review, that they'll lead to the defunding of our programs or services or activities. I will tell you, it's funny. I woke up this morning on my birthday, and I think I woke up about 5 a.m. And I don't know why it came up on my feed in social media, but there was a interview with Dr. Martin Luther King, and Dr. Martin Luther King gave this speech that I actually ended up sending around to people, where he said, "You know what? I'm at risk of being defunded, but that's not what drives me." He said, "What drives me is this work to end racial injustice in this country. So it comes with risk that, quite frankly, you have to fight for what you believe in, and you have to take risk." I thought, how ironic this morning that I wake up for my birthday and I'm now reading or listening to a Dr. King interview where he's giving us sage advice for this moment we're in right now. It doesn't mean that you don't have to adjust, that you don't have to protect yourself for the funding and the programs and services you provide, but courage is needed in this moment as well.
Talking to Michael Curry.
Well, there was a talking about courage. There was a piece in, was it the Atlantic? Yeah, it was. No, the New Republic talked about, the headline of which was "Trump's war on Black America isn't an accident. It's a strategy." Is it a strategy?
I want to say HELL, yeah, but I don't know if I can say that on the radio. So I'm going to spell it out, and maybe that's different. But I would say this, that if you know that when they terminated employees of the federal government, and a disproportionate number of them were African-American women, which has driven up Black female unemployment rate in this country to the highest levels it's been since COVID. When you talk about unbridled law enforcement that will not be held accountable, that can enter communities and even the armed forces now in DC, and that they can arrest, harass, detain young and any Black person in a community and brown person. If you talk about eliminating the facts of American history, the history of slavery in this country, and you want to spin the story as if Robert E. Lee was a good guy who didn't defend slavery. I can go down the list. If you're putting tariffs in place and the Black and brown folks in the communities like I grew up in Roxbury and Lennox Street, housing projects, can't afford that bread and butter you were supposed to make cheaper. and they can't afford the basic living things that they need, you are hurting Black folks in Black communities. This is real. And unfortunately, the alarm bell hasn't gone off to the point that I think it should, that this administration is setting us back pre-1964 Civil Rights Act, pre-1965 Voting Rights Act, pre-Medicaid and Medicare 1965, 60 years ago. I am deeply concerned and troubled.
Yeah, there was a story that about this woman, Peggy Carr, who worked at the education department for 35 years, a Black woman, staff loved her, done an excellent job, chief statistician there, and they talked about how she was fired for no seeming reason except that they wanted to shut down the education department. Security guard escorts her out of the office, like right in front of her whole staff. Everybody's crying and in tears. And the point was that, as you just mentioned, that there's been significant gains in the federal government in terms of hiring from diverse backgrounds. 35 years, she's canned, and it's not easy finding another job if you're like. She'd be at least 55 or 60 at this point in the game, too, right?
Yeah, I think, again, get the narrative, right? The narrative is these terminations were, and the notices they received was as if they were not qualified, that they weren't doing quality work for the federal government. And I think there were some casualties of that war on DEI, which included some longtime white staffers of the federal government. But this was a target. And now it's eliminated the diversity in our federal government. And again, the historian in me goes back to Woodrow Wilson when he segregated federal offices, and Black folks initially thought that he would be a president that would lead a charge in terms of inclusion within federal government. He did the exact opposite. And now in this second term of Trump, we will see major losses in terms of our federal presence in those key offices, and the trickle effect, if I'll call it that. The byproduct of that is that when we're not in the room, bad decisions are made, bad policy is derived or created. And I'm concerned when the Black woman, like the one you just mentioned, is walked out of her job as if she was not capable of doing that job. That's a narrative that Americans are sitting with right now.
Did you both mention that the layoffs, federal layoffs, are having disproportionate impact
on Black
in general
women.
on Black
women?
Did okay.
Yeah.
By the way, at the top of the hour, I'm sure we're going to hear this on the national newscast. Supreme Court just ruled 6-3. You can tell who the 6 are and who the 3 are. And they, in an emergency appeal from Trump, they lifted an L.A. judge's order that barred, quote, roving patrols, end quote, from snatching people of Southern California off their Southern California streets based on how they look, what language they speak, what work they do, or where they happen to be. In Sotomayor's dissent, she said the decision is yet another grave misuse of our emergency docket. We should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, appears to work a low-wage job rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost. I dissent. I mean, it really is it is a wholly owned subsidiary. The Supreme Court of the Trump administration. It's shocking. It's really.
I remember being on
30 seconds.
Being on your show once, and I was debating with a Republican commentator who said Supreme Courts just make decisions based on the law, and there's no bias. And I wonder where she is right now, because this was absolutely not constitutional, not based on protecting rights, and again, a Trump chess move with this Supreme Court that he's winning in some cases.
Michael, happy birthday again, and thanks for spending part of it with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have fun.
Michael. We've been speaking with Michael Curry, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, on the board of the National NAACP. We say goodbye to you listening up on NEPM. Be sure to tune in to the fabulous 413 starting at 3 this afternoon. Monty and Calise will feature music with Ron Sexsmith ahead of a show in Springfield tomorrow. We're going to keep going here in Boston after the noon news on 89.7. Is everything Trump does a distraction from the Epstein files? Well, maybe not. Journalist Mark Leibovich of Atlantic has a warning to look at the bigger picture. Taken all together, Trump's actions fit a certain pattern. He joins us next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And GM Roth Design Remodeling. Dreams delivered. With custom kitchens, bathrooms, and additions. Serving New England for over 39 years. Learn more at gmroth.com. After tragedy strikes in a rural Mexican community, the residents uncover an alarming truth about their water supply. Watch POV, The Age of Water, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Braude, ahead on Hour 2 of BPR. It's a question that's been on the mind of Atlantic writer Mark Leibovich for the past 8 months as Donald Trump continues with his Constitution takedown. Why the muted response from so many top Democrats? Specifically, where is Barack Obama? And inspired by an article Mark wrote in March, if Ringo Starr believes in peace and love, why can't we all?
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll ask Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett about the latest pressing health questions of the moment, including RFK and Tylenol and vaccines. Plus, what does it take to get men to see a doctor? It's all next in the second hour, BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. Supreme Court is giving President Trump the green light to remove a Biden-appointed member of the Federal Trade Commission, despite a 1914 federal law limiting the president from firing an FTC commissioner without cause. Chief Justice John Roberts had issued an order to temporarily block a lower court's ruling that reinstated Commissioner Rebecca Kelly Slaughter while her case was litigated. She and fellow Democratic appointee Alvaro Bedoya were dismissed earlier this year. In Florida, jury selection is underway in the trial of the man charged with attempting to assassinate then-candidate Donald Trump last year. NPR's Greg Allen reports a Secret Service agent says he spotted Ryan Ruth holding a rifle and fired on him while Trump was golfing at his West Palm Beach club in September.
A witness says he saw Ruth running from what prosecutors call a sniper's nest in the tree line near Trump's golf club in West Palm Beach. Ruth was arrested a short time later driving north on the interstate. Ruth faces 5 charges, including attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate, which carries a maximum sentence of life. He'll be representing himself in court. U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon granted Ruth's request to dismiss his federal public defenders, but said they will remain on standby. Last week, Judge Cannon denied Ruth's request to subpoena President Trump, saying his motion contained, quote, various insults and no pertinent facts. Greg Allen, NPR News, Fort Pierce, Florida.
Israeli forces say they have leveled another high-rise building in Gaza City that the military says its Hamas enemies have been using for surveillance. Israel's been warning residents to evacuate south as it pushes ahead with demolitions in Gaza City. Many Palestinians say they've been repeatedly displaced since the war began nearly 2 years ago, and there's no place safe to run, not even humanitarian zones. 5 years ago, the Labor Day wildfires ravaged Oregon, destroying thousands of homes and killing 11 people. Today, people are still living in hotels and other transitional housing. Jefferson Public Radio's Jane Vaughn reports.
The Alameda fire in southwestern Oregon destroyed around 2,500 homes on September 8, 2020. Most of them were manufactured, and many of the people displaced were older or Spanish speakers. Mary Martin used to live in a mobile home park that burned to the ground. Earlier this year, she finally got a state grant and purchased her own manufactured home.
I have a new spot. I still miss my old spot a lot. And I wish it could have been the same, but yeah, it's just new. I don't like new.
The 2020 wildfire season was the most destructive on record in the state's history. For NPR News, I'm Jane Vaughn in Ashland, Oregon.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Some tea riders are criticizing a new program aimed at cracking down on fare evasion. GBH's Jeremy Siegel reports the MBTA launched this effort this morning.
Fare engagement representatives clad in khaki pants and blue shirts are fanning out across the subway system to catch people who try to sneak aboard without paying. Rider Paul Holding says he is not a fan.
I think it's stupid because people pay taxes and it should just be free.
The T says the move is necessary to prevent millions in revenue losses. Riders caught in the act will first get a warning. After that, they'll face fines between $50 and $100. The fight against fare evasion is starting on the red, blue, and orange lines. After that, it will expand to MBTA buses, the Green Line, and the Mattapan trolley. Jeremy Siegel, GBH News.
Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey has taken the necessary steps to keep the Commonwealth from running low or even out of personal protective equipment, or PPE, like it did during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Eagle Tribune reports that the items such as respirators, ventilators, and masks are currently stockpiled at a state-owned warehouse in Franklin. Also in that facility are personal protective gear, bandages, and refrigerated medical products, as well as some other items. In sports, Red Sox in Oakland for the start of a series with the Athletics tonight. Monday Night Football, the Vikings at the Bears. 67 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday, and out in Springfield at the NEPM studios next week, Monday and Tuesday. Governor Deval Patrick and Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell, and many more wonderful people are going to join us out there, Jim.
Who are those people?
I don't know.
I didn't know you didn't. In any case, President Barack Obama is considered the Democratic Party's most talented communicator. On the other side, the GOP's top guy is the current president, a man who lays waste to the Constitution and has elevated lying and misrepresentation to an art form. Here's just a recent example. Here's the president just a couple of weeks ago, Trump, endorsing a fringe conspiracy theory promulgated by his own director of national intelligence, that's Tulsi Gabbard, positioning Obama himself as a traitor.
Should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard, what they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up all the way going up to 2020 of the election. They tried to rig the election, and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason.
Treason punishable by death, by the way. In response, Obama, through a spokesperson, wrote that he does not normally, quote, dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation coming out of Trump's White House with a response. Well, should he? Journalist Mark Leibovich has been writing about a generally missing Barack Obama and a strategically challenged Democratic leadership in general. And he joins us. He's a staff writer at The Atlantic and, of course, a dreaded local angle. Mark got his start many moons ago at the Boston Phoenix. Mark, it's great to see you, as always.
Great to be with you guys, and great to be at least virtually back in Boston. And yeah, the Phoenix is always going to be the home team to some degree.
Exactly.
4 or 5 years ago.
So Mark, before we get to what you had to say about Barack Obama and Jeffrey Epstein files and so forth, we just learned the Supreme Court now is saying they're okaying roving bands of ICE agents running around in California, and we have ICE roving around all over Massachusetts now as well, and we have a lot of unusual things going on in the United States of America. What's your sense of the state of affairs overall?
Oof. Well, look, this is kind of scary and kind of unusual in a lot of ways. I mean, I think part of it is just the sort of space-time continuum. Like, start really basic here, which is the California stuff basically started a couple of months ago, right? So there was all this back and forth, and it was a huge story earlier this summer. And eventually, lawsuits were filed left and right. You knew it was going to go to the Supreme Court, and it did. And here we are. I mean, the key here is that this was now 2 months ago. Whatever damage was done in California, whatever happened is now like 2 or 3 cities away. So obviously, if the courts were for some reason going to shut this down, and it looks like, this is going to go all the way, and who knows how it's going to end up. This is going to keep happening until it's litigated over a long period of time. But Trump works at a very, very kind of TikTok attention span, right? It's just, he just is going to act. There's going to be all this chaos. There's going to be all this real life consequence. Lives are going to be affected, if not ruined. And, at some point down the road, the court is going to rule. And, a lot of damage can be done in that interregnum period. And also, who's to say what rulings are going to be obeyed, how they're going to be interpreted, how are they going to be disregarded and then litigated back? There's a lot going on here. But anyway, Trump, I think, is using the plodding, methodical, sort of deliberate speed of justice in this country to his advantage, because he works at a much different speed. And it's not a very considered speed, but it also is a lot more efficient if you want to do maximum damage.
Let's step back even further. How much of a threat to our democracy are we experiencing right now, Mark Leibovich?
It feels pretty big. Look, that's a $64,000 question. I get, a lot of us get, which is, how bad is this? How bad is it going to get? Are we on the cusp of authoritarianism, and so forth? Look, it feels like we're here in many fundamental ways, right? It's unclear how you're going to sort of roll back from this. The Democratic Party has massive problems, which is a whole other topic that, a lot of people are writing about and talking about. But yeah, Donald Trump has shown that he will do whatever he wants to do until he is stopped. And, start with the first sort of check and balance on the presidency, which is, his or her own conscience, his or her own shame, what have you. That's, this is obviously very different from any president that's come before him. The Republican Party is completely cowed, for any number of reasons. That's been true for and, in some ways just astounding as it is now. But it is a rubber stamp. The resistance is kind of not really, not coherent at this point, not cohesive. People are scared. And, the bottom line is, in the day-to-day, Donald Trump is doing a lot of things that are scaring the heck out of a lot of people and really, really affecting lives in far more direct ways than he did the first term.
You don't get to listen to our show, but you should, of course. But one of our goals every day, Mark, is to identify anybody who has any hope about anything and beat it out of them by the end of the show at 2 o'clock.
Well, the Red Sox won yesterday.
Well, I know. That's a very good point, actually. I was lucky enough to be at an event that Larry Ty, formerly of the Globe, run this great healthcare thing for healthcare journalists he runs at Babson College on Friday night. And Nicole Hannah-Jones of the 1619 Project, and former colleague of yours, I just realized, right, at the New York Times Magazine, was asked the question about hope. And she said, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have any. And it's probably going to take, and I'm paraphrasing, but that was pretty close. And it's going to take 67 to 70 years to recover from Trump. Remembering we're only 7 or 8 months into this thing. A lot of people with whom we speak seem to feel if you hold your breath for 3.25 more years, we just flick the switch of democracy back on and pretty quickly things return. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Well, she's right. All of that. This doesn't just flip back on in the right direction after if it's over, if it is over anytime soon. I guess what gives me hope, part of it is kind of a tired answer in some way, but it's sincere in my case. Young people, I know a lot of, I'm father to a lot of three people, knowing their friends, talking as often as possible, trying to evangelize for journalism with young reporters, college students, being around young people. That, I think is a cause for hope. And also traveling enough to know that even when you're in red states and probably around Trump voters, most people, basically get along and probably are not living politics as intensely as I know I am, and a lot of people who are informed in all this stuff are, and, are trying to live their lives, and we're not as divided as the politics of our country are. I mean, I guess the other piece of this is, Democrats are very much, they look to be in the wilderness. Every party that loses a presidential election, and this was true of Republicans in 2020 and early 2021 after the insurrection, it was true after Hillary lost in 2016, every party that loses a presidential election has a catastrophic view of where they are and their inability to get reconstituted and do anything. Quite often, I mean, it didn't happen last time, but it happened in some ways. The midterms, could be determinative and actually break a momentum here. And there could be, we could be having a different conversation in a few years. But yeah, I certainly take Nicole's point. There are orders of magnitude level of concern that I think we should all be having at this point.
Yeah, the midterms could have a huge impact unless he seizes the voting machines.
Or sends in the National Guard so people be afraid to come and vote, and bans mail-in voting. I mean, who knows what could go wrong between now and then. But you talked about the Democratic Party being in a mess, and I think a lot of people agree with that, and even Democrats don't like Democrats. But you think that, according to a great piece you wrote in The Atlantic, that they should stop saying everything is a distraction to get away from the Jeffrey Epstein problem. What'd you say?
Yeah, well, basically what I said was, I mean, Democrats do have a kind of a collective lack of imagination, and they're just not a very good communication organization at this point. And I've noticed a lot of Democrats who should know better and who are far smarter than they sometimes sound, just reflexively, if Donald Trump is accusing Barack Obama of treason, or if he is, if he's putting tanks in streets or military in streets, as he has of a number of major cities at this point, there's this reflexive soundbite of like Adam Schiff or Chuck Schumer or Wes Moore or any number of big name Democrats who will say, oh, he's just trying to distract from the Epstein scandal. It's like Democrats have seized on the Epstein scandal, which is a very real problem for Trump and Republicans to some degree, and it certainly divided the MAGA base in a way that very few issues have. But it kind of sounds like a gimmick. It sounds very cheapening when, in fact, look, I mean, the fact that there are large portions of our government that seem to be descending into fascist tendencies, that itself should be something you should argue and fight against, not just sort of going to the cutesy communications, Epstein this, Epstein that thing. But look, no, Democrats have massive problems that I could talk a lot about here, but I don't want to take up the entire...
Well, no, tell us about the massive problems.
Well, okay, first of all, start with, fundraising. Okay, so they lost the presidential election. Mm-hmm. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the two highest-ranking senators in Congress, members of Congress in Washington, Democratic leaders at this point, don't seem to be very effective in mounting the kind of pushback, at least that satisfies Democrats across the country. But I think a lot of the low approval ratings of Democrats are actually coming from within the Democratic Party because they want their party to fight harder. They want to be more effective. They're craving new leaders and so forth. The Democratic National Committee is a mess. Ken Martin, the new chairman, very nice guys from Minnesota, longtime chair of the Democrats in Minnesota. He's trying his best. Fundraising is really, really bad off. And look, I mean, the Democrats have a lower approval rating than Donald Trump do right now. I mean, they're like in the low 30s, high 20s, depending on where you look. Now, having said all that, what tends to happen in these cycles is, one, the person in the party in power tends to overreach. That very well could be happening here. Donald Trump is not popular. The Republican Party policies are not popular. Certainly the so-called big, beautiful bill is not popular. Donald Trump's, handling of things like immigration, which was a very strong issue for him, not as strong anymore. Inflation, which is essentially, what some would say got him elected last year. That's not going in a good direction, and voters don't perceive him as helping matters there, not to mention the economy in general. So, that is a massive marker there that could be the biggest sort of savior for the Democratic Party. The other part of it is, when you come towards a midterm, it's not you're not defined by a guy named Ken Martin or Hakeem Jeffries or someone like that. You're defined by candidates, and candidate recruitment for Democrats has been really, really good. There are some very good both Senate, governor, and congressional candidates across the country that I think Democrats feel very good about. I mean, it's just a question of them asserting themselves, hopefully, for Democrats' sake, getting money behind them. And, then they will have a midterm race that people actually focus on a race-by-race basis rather than just, one big mess of a party, which is what it looks like from this point.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with your analysis of the ineffectiveness of most of the Democratic leaders, even though I think there's some wonderful exceptions among some of the more outspoken governors and a couple of senators. But we originally reached out to you when you wrote your piece about where's Barack Obama. And where is, and I am one who thinks that almost all the time when almost anything happens and I see an ineffective Democratic response or a no response. Where is Barack Obama, and why has he decided to be such a non-presence, except if you're interested in finding out what are his songs of the year and books of the year?
Yeah. He's got good playlists, book recommendations, that kind of stuff. Really, really good. March Madness picks, like he's a guy with March Madness picks and so forth. Yeah, I wrote that piece a few months ago. It sort of came in response to the fact that, Democrats seemed to be even more in the wilderness then than they are now. There was just a real vacuum of leadership. Trump seemed to be running roughshod over everything and everyone, to a degree that, obviously has probably gotten worse since then. But I kind of wrote a question or wrote a story giving voice to all the people who are asking, where is this guy? This is probably the best communicator Democrats have at this point. He's probably the most popular Democrat out there, or one of the few. Shouldn't he be taking a role where he's trying to fill the vacuum of leadership that Democrats have now until there's some kind of recovery, and there are new leaders that Democrats can sort of stand up. And look, Obama's people pushed back real hard on this. They did not like this piece at all. They said, well, he's doing this, that, and the other thing. He's building a library. He's talking privately to Democratic candidates. He's doing this, that, and also, he's yesterday. Democrats need to find a new leader, a new savior, if you will. And look, there is, I think, if you talk to a lot of Democrats and donors and people who worked for him and high-level Democrats, there is, I think, an appetite for him to be more outspoken rather than to be so mindful of not cheapening his voice and not speaking up and diluting whatever power it is he thinks he has. Because, I would say, a lot of people would say, look, there are tanks in the streets, Mr. President. It's kind of an all hands on deck moment. You could be more helpful than you are.
Did you suggest, I'm sorry, Marjorie, it was either you quoting somebody or your own idea that whenever Trump does something horrible, a lot of people say, can you imagine if Barack Obama did this? And was it you that suggested that once a week, maybe do a little podcast saying, can you imagine if I did this? I love that idea.
It's a great idea. Just 15 minutes, a little video thing, just like pick a couple of things that Trump did and, just call the podcast. Can you imagine if I did this? And he could have fun. He's got amazing joke writers at his disposal. He could, it doesn't have to be a serious sort of Stenorian, is that the right word? Stenorian. It doesn't have to be like a big dignified presidential thing. He could just go out. I think it would be very effective. His people, again, they mocked me. They said, oh, the president needs to do a little podcast because we need another. Whatever. I get all their arguments. This is not what ex-presidents have traditionally done, to which I would say this is not what sitting presidents have traditionally done that we're living through right now. But yeah, I think that would be great.
You said a minute ago he's great joke writers. I was thinking as you said that meatloaf joke worked out well at the White House press correspondents' dinner, didn't it?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't remember when he turns to Trump in the crowd and he says Donald Trump has to make really important decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Like whether or not to fire meatloaf or not. And a lot of your colleagues think it was that humiliation that caused Trump to decide to do what he did.
I always thought that was a bit of a simplistic read of the situation. Yeah. I hear that. I get.
Do you know, by the way, in your former newspaper, when Bat Out of Hell came out, which I think was Meatloaf's first album, after they referred to him as Meatloaf, they referred to him as Mr. Meatloaf and all the rest of the review.
No, Mr. Loaf. It was not
Mr. Loaf.
Mr. Loaf. Yeah. That's right. The New York Times.
Iggy Pop was Mr. Pop.
But
I don't know if that's apocryphal or not. I do remember when I was at the Phoenix, Peter Kadzis, who
worked here for years.
Yeah, I think he told me this. I was his assistant for a while, and Peter, if you're listening, I remember you telling me about Mr. Loaf or Mr. Pop. Or what.
That was great.
I don't know what we're talking about. Margie's about to take over.
Well, no. I love one of the reasons I loved your piece about where is Barack Obama, and you're right. It was a couple of months ago, but you just begin it with he's jetting off. This is Obama to Norway. He's going to visit his old friend, the king over there, and they're going to eat fresh local salmon smoked on the premises, seasoned with herbs from the royal garden. This life of comfort and nonchalance, which I think you captured. And meanwhile, Michelle Obama's writing a book on fashion. It seems like the timing is not. So George W. went off and painted paintings, but we weren't facing what we're facing now. And it seems like we need a more Jimmy Carter-like approach to this particular moment, even though Obama
he was involved in the world. He wasn't that involved in presidential politics.
Well, because it wasn't an emergency. I mean, I think we're in an emergency situation here. It's not the right time for a fashion book or for him to be eating salmon. I'm with you, but the question is, what does he do? And maybe the little podcast would be something like that.
Just something more than he is. I mean, I would say, well, first of all, there was no public clamoring in either party for George W. Bush to come out.
That's a very good point.
He does. I think there is a lot of nostalgia, certainly among Democrats, for him versus what we have now. But and Carter. Again, a different comparison because he was a very unpopular president, and he kind of rebuilt his reputation over decades of really genuinely good work. But the point about Obama is one of the markers I looked at here was, every time his new news playlists or book recommendations come out, I sort of get like an uptick of frustrated notes saying like screw this, like
exactly.
I don't care about these book recommendations anymore. And there's a lot of hostility to it because it's not exactly reading the room it doesn't
exactly
mesh with the urgency of the moment. Now, he's never recommended one of my books, so I'm resentful for personal reasons as well. But so this is what this is all about. But no, it is. I mean, there is a sense of nonchalance. There is a sense. And again, you got to be careful because there is this weird precedent in our modern society where ex-presidents were allowed to get ridiculously rich on book deals, on speaking deals, on consulting deals. In Obama's case, Netflix deals and, Spotify deals, what have you. I mean, they're obviously doing really well as the Clintons have, as I assume, Bush has had.
Not as well as the Trumps are while they're in office.
That's whole other conversation. But
So, speaking of a whole other conversation, let's have a whole other conversation.
Let's do it.
Here's the number one Beatles song from 1966.
In the
Okay, I rarely am a jealous person, Mark Leibovich. When I found out that Mark Leibovich got to spend a year tracking the 84-year-old Ringo around the world, I was a jealous man. How did it come about?
Because I wanted to make people like you jealous. What came about was, the presidential campaign was coming up. It was like 2023, and I knew it was going to be a slog, and it was going to be really depressing, and I knew I was going to have to cover it, most of the time. I wanted a touchstone of just pure joy, pure, I guess you'd call it, fandom, and just something completely different to focus on a little bit, just periodically, so I can sort of check in. And I didn't think he would ever give me the time of day. I found his publicist. I wrote a really plaintive, really shameless, really over the top.
Well, you're a fanboy, right? You're a fanboy.
In this case, I absolutely am. Yeah, no, there are certain pieces I will do where I come full fanboy, like baseball and the Tom Brady piece a number of years ago. disgusting. Anyway, no. So Ringo, he let me come visit with him. Now, I wouldn't say I traveled the world with him in that like we were talking every day, but I talked to him when like one of his LPs came out like last year. I followed him to when his country album came out last year. I went to his birthday party. It was a blast. This is a great guy. He is, probably one of, literally I think every person I mentioned, hey, I'm writing about Ringo Starr, just a smile would come to their face. And even within the Beatles, Yellow Submarine comes on, right? You just played it. And, his songs, Yellow Submarine, Octopus's Garden, they're pure joy songs, right? There's not a lot of the sort of fraught, Lennon v. McCartney. He's just sort of the Beatle that you can feel good about. And he was also, he's very popular as a singles. His singles were very popular in the 70s. He does all kinds of cool things. So anyway, but I just wanted to meet a Beatle and get a picture with him, and I put it on my Instagram, and that made my life.
You spoke to McCartney about their relationship. What did he say?
Well, that was cool.
Very cool.
I was in Greenland. How's that? So Trump's inauguration. They said, why don't you go to Greenland, because Trump wants to buy Greenland and see how the Trump story is playing in Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. And I went, and it was the middle of the winter, and I got stranded for like a week longer than I wanted to, because like a lot of planes get snowed out there. It's a really tiny airport. Long story short. Anyway, I was supposed to interview McCartney on the phone. From back here in D.C., I had this whole sort of Zoom setup and so forth. But I got stranded in my hotel room in Nuuk, and he heard about my situation. So he came on and said, Greenland? What are you doing in Greenland? I've never been in Greenland. And immediately I thought that it was cool that I'd been in a place on the planet that Paul McCartney now, he actually then allowed that he might have stopped for some refueling or something, but then he thought it might have been Anchorage or, whatever. I didn't want to get into it with him. No, but he was great. It was, look, I talked to Paul McCartney on the phone. We talked for about, half hour or so. Sounded, like he sounded lovely. He sounded, he was nothing but affection for Ringo, but he made some really, really cool points. And it was really cool towards the end of the piece and said, to be able to start a section just saying, Paul McCartney is on the phone or something like that.
Well, so give us. He always struck me, just as a regular Beatles fan, as the least tortured of the four of them. Ringo. Yes,
Paul?
Ringo.
I think he was.
Yeah. How come?
I think he was. Well, partly he just got. Well, first of all, he spent. His childhood was terrible. He grew up in abject poverty in a really terrible section of Liverpool. He was really sick. He got terrible infection. I think he got what was the other thing? He got terrible, just bad. He was really sick a few times. He spent years in a sanatorium, in a hospital.
Wow.
And these teachers or these volunteers came through with like drums and percussion and triangles, maracas one day. And at that point, I think he was like 12 or something. He just said, drums, this is what I love. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. It's probably simpler. It's a little more complicated than that. But he was not the tortured artist. He was in another band. He was older than the others. He was just sort of a drummer who loved drumming. Everyone liked him. The Beatles met him. They fell like immediately in love with him as a friend. And then, he just has this kind of sixth sense where his drumming just melded perfectly with the Beatles, and he was always just thrilled to be part of this, and he kind of lottery one to have survived his childhood, because like I guess his mother was told like on 3 different occasions that he wasn't going to live till the next year.
I didn't know that.
And so he won that lottery. I survived my childhood in Liverpool lottery, and then he gets sort of tapped on the shoulder to join this incredibly magic entity, the Beatles. And it was all kind of house money. And if you watch these documentaries, he's kind of always floating above a lot of the tension. And he's just really, really gracious. He's the one who stayed friends with all of them. There were, long years of feuds between Paul and John and George and John and all kinds of complications. And Ringo always was just sort of like the glue that kind of held it all together in some ways.
Is he still married to the Bond girl?
He is, almost 50 years.
50 years. So there you go. Long-time marriage, too. Very impressive.
His brother-in-law, by the way, is Joe Walsh of the Eagles. He married Barbara's sister.
I didn't know that.
So maybe there is hope, Mark Leibovich.
There is definitely hope.
Maybe there is. Hey, you're great, and we really appreciate your time. It's great talking to you as always.
Love your stuff
Thanks
in the
so much.
Atlantic. I loved it in the Times,
thanks,
too, but I love it in the Atlantic as well. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, Mark. Appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thanks.
Okay, see you later.
Good to see you.
We've been speaking with Mark Leibovich, who's a staff writer for The Atlantic, and he's a terrific writer. He is. Coming up after this quick break, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett. She's going to tell us all about RFK and vaccines and Tylenol and a bunch of other medical questions. Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has sounded the alarm about an increase in malicious cyber attacks targeting American water systems.
It's kind of scary that I'm the only door between, the Iranians and our water system. Kind of makes me a little nervous.
How one New England town is defending from digital attacks. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And MIT Federal Credit Union, providing personal loan options to help consolidate debt, fund home improvements, and more. Applications at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, celebrating 125 years of Symphony Hall. The towering music of Beethoven's Missa Solemnis, Mozart's Jupiter Symphony, and Mahler's Fourth Symphony opens the season. More at bso.org. And Buzzards Bay Coalition. You can choose your own coastal biking adventure on October 5th with 41, 77, and 100-mile options. SaveBuzzardsBay.org/ride. This message funded by the Southeastern Mass Visitors Bureau. And GM Roth Design Remodeling. Dreams delivered. With custom kitchens, bathrooms, and additions. Serving New England for over 39 years. Learn more at gmroth.com.
The med spa business in Massachusetts is booming, with people flocking to places to freeze wrinkles and plump up their face. But there are no state training standards for cosmetic injecting.
We have among the most lax oversight of who can inject patients with botulinum toxins or fillers. There are more and more people performing treatments who have less and less training doing them.
I'm Liz Niesloss. That story, Wednesday on GBH's Morning Edition.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. And as we said, we're out in Springfield, which we're pretty excited about, at the NEPM studios Monday and Tuesday of next week. Governor Patrick will join us in the studio. The Attorney General will do Ask the Attorney General for an hour from our NEPM studios, and a bunch of other people, too. Joined now in Studio 3 by Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at BU Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Doctor, it's good to see you.
Wonderful to be with you both.
Great.
So we were watching those hearings last week with RFK Jr. When he said that everybody in the United States who wants a vaccine can get a vaccine. Is that true?
Yeah, really complicated and good question. So I think all of your listeners will know well that there's been quite a lot of unrest that's happened in the CDC over this past summer and obviously in August. And usually CDC comes out directly after the FDA saying what people can get or not get for vaccines. So FDA last week announced that for COVID vaccines, it's really just going to be for people 65 and greater, or those people with some sort of medical condition that puts them at higher risk. I've spoken on the show in the past about what that long list is. It's important that listeners look at that. But that is really different than than opening the doors to people to get vaccines. This kind of question has now put each state in a different situation. So currently, if you are in Florida, we know that the attorney, that the head of the health,
Surgeon General,
yeah,
whatever
thank
he
you.
is.
I almost said Attorney General, but Surgeon General came out last week and said that actually no children need to be required to get vaccines. So obviously that's different than saying you can't get it. But in a way, if you're thinking about it, it actually closes the door in the other way. Because if you are not putting pressure on pharmacies or hospitals or clinics to have more stock of more vaccine, right? If you're creating that sort of confusion, then people who want to get things may not be able to get them. So that inherently is placing barriers between people and getting vaccines. So there is a lot of consternation that came out with the Senate hearings last week. We certainly can get into that. But the fact is it is making it more difficult for people to get vaccines.
It's not only concretely difficult,
yes.
But when there's confusion, as somebody who used to work in electoral politics,
yes.
when you're really confused, you know what you do? You don't act.
Right.
You
So
do nothing because you're not
true.
sure what. So are we getting
exactly
them? Are we
right.
not getting them? So let's forget.
Yes.
We talked earlier, Maura Healey became,
Yeah.
I think, the first governor in the country
Correct.
to say she was going to order insurance companies. They will cover it. But the thing was unclear to me in the reporting, and maybe I just missed it. If you don't have private insurance, will you be covered, or will you have to do an out-of-pocket thing?
Yeah, so there was, the Globe had a front page story, I believe on Saturday, a sort of FAQ about just that. So people who are self-insured, there's the debate, the jury's still out on that. Yeah, so there's some thought that the DPH for Massachusetts will also step in for self-insured because it really, it creates a really important safety net for our entire state to be able to say, to your point, Jim, cut through the confusion, just say everybody 6 months and up in our state can get COVID vaccine. Ages 6 months to 5 years, those children need to get those vaccines in their doctor's offices. But 5 years and up, our pharmacies are now offering COVID vaccines. And just really, really important. So until last week, Massachusetts was not allowed, our pharmacies were not allowed to give vaccines that were not already pushed forward and recommended by the advisory committee that comes through CDC. But what Governor Healey did last week was so monumental because she said for the first time, our Department of Public Health can be the one that dictates what can be given in our pharmacies. So it gives us our power back.
You're not only a good citizen, as we know you to be, but obviously a deeply committed, hardworking doctor. When you see RFK Jr., forget the whole pathetic performance, say he wasn't able to answer the question about how many people died from COVID, the level of not only dishonesty, because you could have said, well, there's a debate. It could have been anywhere from 1 to 1.4 million. If you can't, the level of disrespect to the people who died
and
to serve an ideology, which is all that was about. I don't want to say the numbers to it.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to that?
I'm incredibly, to your point, is I see every day, I see the impact on humans and their families and their communities of poor public health decisions. And I think the fact that public health has been so cut at the knees with these kinds of decisions and keeping us off and out of the kind of decision making and the tables, takes the stories of individuals and their communities off the tables too. And so, of course, it's angering and upsetting, but more important, it's immoral.
Talking to Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett.
So people may recall that RFK Jr. is going to announce what caused autism in September.
He has announced it. Yes.
Yes. He now says that there is a link to Tylenol use in pregnancy and folate deficiencies. So what is this all? By the way, Laura Loomer, that other very odd person who's in Trump's orbit, she's a big Tylenol believer too. But so what do you make of Tylenol and folate deficiencies? I don't even know what folate deficiencies are.
Okay. So I'm just going back to sort of a very basic public health teaching. So when you talk about an association, that does not mean cause and effect, okay? So, for instance, on a hot day, somebody could eat ice cream, and we also know on a hot day, violent crime goes up, right? And this was the quote. You can't actually say that ice cream is the cause of the violent crime, right? So there is, I think it's this importance of this paradox of ubiquity, right? So we know that Tylenol is one of the medications, very few medications, that is considered to date safe in pregnancy. And so pregnant women are taking Tylenol. We also know that pregnant women may take Tylenol for other reasons. They may be having lots of pain, lots of fevers. They may be sick. So we don't actually know necessarily that it's the Tylenol that's causing the autism. The reason that this is even coming up, and I'm not throwing out these, I think levels of inquiry and following the data and following the science is critical. Right. I think we don't want to close the door on this question. I think it's a really important question. We know that there are now studies that have come out, one that was just recently released looking at 46 well-done studies. And out of those 46, I believe there was 27 that showed some sort of association with Tylenol use in autism. Again, association does not mean cause and effect. So there is something there. We need to look at it. But the question is it the Tylenol or is it other things that were happening? How much Tylenol were these women taking? How often were they taking it? We can't do something called a randomized controlled trial on pregnant people. It's not ethical. We can't do that. So we're not going to have a control group with people taking, tons of Tylenol and some people taking it sparingly. So what I would say at this point, as we continue, ACOG has already come out and said there's, there's not a strong correlation that we're seeing or causation that we're seeing. I would say to pregnant women, just like I would say to my patients, if you're going to take Tylenol, take it like other things, take it sparingly and don't take it often. And, I think meanwhile, this idea that we're going to have an answer for what causes autism that's incredibly multifactorial by today, to me indicates that there's going to be more and more of these things that we're trying to find the answer, which is exactly the right thing to do, but perhaps trying to spearhook things too early.
I don't think he is trying to find an answer with all due respect. I think he knows what he thinks the answer is, and he's trying to figure out a way to get to that answer.
Or
you know what I mean?
Or he was supposed to come up with something by September.
Your mic's not on.
Oh, my mic's not on.
It is on
Or
now.
he was supposed to come up with something by September, so I felt pressure to come up with something in September.
Probably both.
But one of the things I read, and you're the physician, but that obviously pregnant women get sick like everybody else gets sick. So if you have a high fever or you have something else going on, I mean, you could question, should you sit there with a high fever? And what does that mean?
Which also causes much more concern, right, for the fetus. Yeah. And by the way, while we're talking about it, access to COVID vaccines for pregnant women inherently will be something that is going to be life-saving for pregnant women and their fetuses. So when we're looking at the span of concerns for different public health measures, I think we need to be taking all things into, consideration. And not close the door on the science and not have Republicans or Democrats say this is a terrible set of studies or this is a good set of studies. Let's talk about science as being nonpartisan and continue to do the research.
The folate deficiency, is that have to do with folic acid?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you get pregnant, you're supposed to take folic acid.
One of the things that we do is we say, are you considering getting pregnant in the next year? And if so, here's your prenatal vitamin.
Yeah, right.
So this is not new information. We, across the board, we've always recommended women to take folic acid. You can also find it in dark leafy greens. There's lots of other places. We started putting it in cereals and Cheerios and things like that, but don't eat too many of those because they cause obesity.
Okay, so long piece, I think, in the New York Times. The starting point is the fact that men have a life expectancy of roughly 5 fewer years on the planet than women. And while they say it's a multi-causal kind of thing, right at the top of the list is after boys stop seeing pediatricians, assuming they do, and hopefully they do, they stop seeing doctors. Do you subscribe to the notion that that's, and maybe you're nodding in agreement, and if you do, what's the fix?
Yeah, I actually, I think there was a great, New York Times Magazine piece on this Cutler Men's Health that they're opening up, where it's really, sort of a culture that's meant to be specifically geared towards men's health, where you've got all kinds of games on the TV, and you're looking out on a field where other people are practicing. And look, the fact is, and I'm so glad we're talking about this, because actually September is Prostate Awareness Month. And I know we talked about prostate cancer a lot when Joe Biden was diagnosed. But again, you don't see people walking around with light blue ribbons, right? Which is right? It's people, I think very few people even know that September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. So 14 out of the 15 leading causes of death, so things like heart attack, stroke, cancers, men lead women.
Is dementia the holdout?
Dementia is the holdout. Alzheimer's, in part because women live longer, and they're more likely to get Alzheimer's as we live longer. It's incredibly multifactorial in terms of why, right? So one of the things, to your point, Jim, was thinking about what are the touch points with the healthcare system that men have versus women. So, once you get through all of your childhood vaccines, all your well-child checks, then at that point, you're less likely to come in, because men don't necessarily think, oh, there's something specific I need to do, right? Women, you need to go in for your pap smears, you need to go in for mammograms, you probably are thinking about some form of birth control, then you get pregnant, you're going for all those pregnancy, visits, then you have postpartum. There's a million reasons why women go in. Men don't necessarily have those kind of touch points that are designated. So that's number one, we need to create more of those touch points and be really clear about how we create those for men. So talking about could you have a cardiovascular men's visit, right? Where you're actually doing the screening for high blood pressure, you're doing the screening for cholesterol, you're talking about smoking cessation. The second piece is stigma. So men have, for what better or worse, there's this masculine culture of I don't need anybody, I'm good. If I'm in pain, I'll just tough it out, right? And so
I'm the exception to that rule.
When I was reading this article, I was definitely thinking about you.
Jim has found his touch points.
I
know. There's no stigma. He's there.
You should start these clinics, Jim. You should be collaborate with you. And then the third thing is
appointments.
I'm proud of it, by the way.
And also be more creative about where we do men's health. Go out into the community. All the barbershop initiatives. That's amazing. Go out to sports bars. Go out to other places.
What's the barbershop initiative?
Where you're actually going out and you're doing public health education in a barbershop.
Oh, okay.
Where men hang out. They don't just go to get a haircut. They go to connect to people. So I think we're not being creative enough. And then, also being really clear about things like, for instance, prostate cancer screening. We know that is, again, it is a shared decision-making process. In other words, you men from 55 years of age to 69 who are average risk need to have a conversation with their healthcare provider of what are the risks of getting cancer screening? What are the benefits of getting cancer screening? What are your goals? That doesn't easily happen in a 15minute visit.
Mm-hmm. How's your
for
prostate,
providers?
That's not your business,
that is, you guys could talk about that after too.
I have a couple aches and pains I'm attending to. Thank you for asking.
But that's really different than a woman at age 40 be like, you're due for your mammogram. So I think that we need to be a lot better about creating spaces for men, and also start to set up things where this is your man physical, right? And actually creating different language. And I really appreciated that these points were raised.
So we've heard all about these weight loss drugs, GLP-1, I guess they call them. But I
heard all about, you're acting like heard all about. menus.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest
They're
thing in America.
microdosing it with GLP-1s.
Well, they're microdosing.
Yeah.
And because they think it's going to keep them living longer. But then some people think they shouldn't be taking them at all because of side effects. Wait, what's the latest anyway on these microdosing?
Oh, the latest is impossible. It's impossible to keep up. And I will say that even as a physician who's on the front line, I know very well how it works. I can remind your listeners quickly. But in terms of being a provider, understanding which insurance companies are covering what for what, right? So we know there was everybody wanted a GLP-1 agonist, right? Everybody was going to the doctor. I have people just last week clamoring to me saying, I really want to lose some weight. I can't lose weight, but I don't have diabetes, and I don't have all these other things. So starting to have those conversations of like, guess what? We're actually going to stop covering those things. Not we. Insurance companies are going to stop covering GLP-1s for people unless they have diabetes. So that's starting to happen. On top of that, we're starting to have people be called by physician, like PBM. So basically it's people who are calling patients and saying, I'm sorry, I know you have been on a medication called Zepbound forever. I'm now going to put you on Wegovy. Zepbound and Wegovy are both GLP-1 agonists, but they don't work the same way, right? And so patients are actually now getting together a lawsuit to sue the PBMs, to say, you're telling me I can't have access to this medication, and yet you don't actually know the clinical impact on my life that has. So as a physician, I can write a letter of medical necessity, and it won't do anything necessarily. So it is a very challenging landscape for patients right now, and for, I will say, providers to navigate, because we're also stuck in the middle of high costs for our state, our health insurance, pharmacy managers who are the in-between, and patients who are saying, look, I just got access to this. My life is turned around. I've gotten so much better, and now you're telling me I can't have access.
Yeah.
Okay, we only have 3 minutes left. We're going to have fun for 3 minutes rather than beat each other over the head.
No, that was so fun.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Last week, we were talking about revenge, essentially. Getting back at people for doing you wrong. And we played the most famous line of revenge ever from Princess Bride, and here it is.
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
It's obviously the legendary Mandy Patinkin. You apparently were listening, and more importantly, you have a connection to Patinkin?
Yeah. So I was literally just finished with patients. I was walking over to the hospital for meetings. I was listening on my AirPods, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're playing Mandy Patinkin. So Mandy Patinkin is my husband's cousin and a dear friend.
He is?
Wow. And an incredible, human being, and spent a lot of time with him. And his kids are some of our closest friends as well.
Have you ever seen I don't know if it was on Twitter or on Instagram, there are fabulous videos of him and his wife dancing at home. Oh my God,
so
they're
Gideon Patinkin is their son, who we're also very close to, and he's the one that makes all those videos.
That's great. They're
terrific. They're all in upstate New York, where we've spent a lot of time, my husband and I, and our kids. And so it's so funny to watch them do their shtick.
They dance around the kitchen?
No, they have such a shtick. And
they have a shtick, is what they have.
It's an amazing... Just everything, the way they connect, the way they dance, the way they talk about politics. They do great work in the world.
Well, speaking of work in the world, beyond him being a brilliant performer, I never even knew when I'm watching Homeland that he had been a Broadway star, and he's an incredible singer.
Yeah.
One time we interviewed him, other than when Catherine's going to get him for us next week. The one time we interviewed him, he had just come back from Greece, where he was helping refugees.
That's right.
I mean, the guy is just incredible.
He's a beautiful person.
He really is.
Wow.
So
I had to tell you the connection.
How great is the film, too? One of the greatest films ever.
The best.
It is. Doctor, it's great to see you as always.
As
Thanks
always.
for your time.
She romps with the stars.
She does.
We didn't know that.
Unlike some of us.
Okay.
That's correct.
We've been speaking with Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School, and Aspen Institute Health Innovator Fellow as well. Thank you very much for coming in, Dr. Gergen Barnett. Coming up, After the news today, the CEO of BlueHub Capital, Elyse Cherry, joins us together with housing advocate Rose Webster-Smith to talk about a court decision regarding BlueHub's predatory lending practices. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Marriage is what brings us together.
The Moth, live at the Wilbur Theater, returns this October. Get your pair of tickets now to experience the storytelling phenomenon live. The sooner you give, the better your seats. Tickets and more info at gbh.org/moth.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Salem's only collection of authentic objects from the 1692 Salem witch trials. Now on view. For tickets, you can visit PEM.org. And the MBTA commuter rail, helping riders skip the stress of city traffic and parking. Just take the train. You can plan your trip at mbta.com/massbytrain.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, head on Hour 3 of BPR. Last week, housing rights activist Bruce Marks was on, celebrating a court decision regarding nonprofit BlueHub being found responsible for predatory lending practices. Today, the CEO of BlueHub, Elyse Cherry, joins us together with housing advocate Rose Webster-Smith to respond.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then you'll hear us pontificate during our Two More Things segment before taking your calls and texts on the subtle art of telling white lies. Would we all be better off if we just told 100% of the truth 100% of the time, or do we owe our collective sanity to the occasional courtesy fib? And what's the latest thing you've caught yourself lying about? We promise we won't tell the higher up, divine or otherwise. It's all next in the third hour of BPR, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. Supreme Court siding with President Trump in ruling that federal immigration raids in the Los Angeles area can resume. A lower court judge had found that the operations amounted to racial profiling, but the administration said the lower court's order impeded its immigration enforcement efforts. The high court's conservative majority issued its ruling in favor of Trump without explanation. Justice Sonia Sotomayor was one of the three liberal justices who dissented and explained why. She writes, quote, "We should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job." Sotomayor goes on to write, quote, "Rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost, I dissent," end quote. The nation's high court has paved the way for the Federal Trade Commission to once again remove its sole Democratic commissioner for now. NPR's Andrea Hsu reports the decision is yet another win for President Trump as he seeks to expand his presidential powers.
The order temporarily blocks the ruling from a lower court judge that reinstated FTC Commissioner Rebecca Kelly Slaughter. Trump fired Slaughter along with another Democratic commissioner back in March, despite federal law that holds that commissioners can only be fired for cause. The president provided no such reason. Instead, in their cases and others, the Trump administration is arguing that the Constitution gives the president authority to remove anyone who wields executive power, that the president must be able to supervise those tasked with carrying out the agenda he promised to the American people. This decision is temporary. The Supreme Court is expected to hear arguments on this topic of presidential power soon. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
Pfizer and BioNTech have released new data that the companies say show their latest COVID-19 vaccine remains safe and effective for protecting people against the latest variants. NPR's Rob Stein has that story.
The companies say a study involving 100 people shows the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine triggers a strong immune response to the variant targeted by the reformulated vaccine. That variant is among the closely related strains that are currently dominant in the U.S. Pfizer and Moderna have been releasing additional information about their vaccines since President Trump called for more data about the shots, and comes as many people are having a harder time getting vaccinated because of new federal restrictions on who's eligible. Rob Stein, NPR News.
U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour. The Nasdaq Composite is up 138 points, or more than 0.5%, at 21,838, and the Dow has risen slightly. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. T-riders have mixed feelings about a new initiative to fight fare evasion that's launching today. The MBTA is deploying crews at subway stations around the system to stop people who try to catch a ride without paying up. Katie Lynch uses the Orange Line to get to work. She says she understands the T needs money, but says she'd prefer if resources were spent on maintenance and preventing shutdowns instead.
If there are all sorts of delays and shuttles happening, then I don't think it's valid for them to be enforcing that. So, why should I have to pay if I have to take a shuttle and then it makes me 20 minutes late?
The T is starting the fare evasion crackdown in phases, beginning with red, blue, and orange lines, with enforcement on the green line and buses to follow. Riders who get caught will first face a warning, followed by fines up to $100. Former President Joe Biden has decided to build his presidential library in Delaware and has tapped a group of former aides, friends, and political allies to get the fundraising ball rolling. Presidential libraries are built with private funds and can cost tens of millions of dollars. The Associated Press reported that this past week, the Joe and Jill Biden Foundation approved a 13-person board that will steer the project. Among the board members are a couple of guys with strong ties to the Commonwealth. They are Democratic fundraising kingpin and former Massachusetts congressional candidate Rufus Gifford and former Boston mayor and Biden's labor secretary Marty Walsh. 68 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists and can communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. Out in Springfield next week, September 15th and September 16th, to be at the NEPM studios out there. We're going to be joined by the former governor, Deval Patrick, and the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. Hello again, Jim.
She's going to do a whole hour of Ask the AG, by the way, in studio at NEPM.
That's right.
I can't remember if it's Monday or Tuesday, but she'll be there. When Marjorie and I first heard about shared appreciation mortgages, we had no idea what they were. In Massachusetts, only one company offers them, BlueHub, previously known as Boston Community Capital. Here's how they work. BlueHub buys houses from banks that are foreclosing on properties, then resells those homes back to original owners at a 25% more than what they paid the bank. More than BlueHub paid the bank. As part of the deal, homeowners facing foreclosure take on a shared appreciation mortgage. It's a kind of loan that entitles the company to a portion of the home's appreciated value when the homeowner sells or refinances. BlueHub charges higher than market rate interest on those mortgages, but maintains the homeowners are better off for a variety of reasons, which their CEO will explain to us in a few minutes. Hundreds of families in Massachusetts have signed on to these mortgages. In 2020, a bunch of them sued BlueHub, alleging predatory lending practices. Last week, Bruce Marks from a group called NACA, it's a housing group which supports the lawsuit, was with us in studio, as were two of the homeowner plaintiffs, celebrating a court ruling that BlueHub had, in fact, engaged in predatory lending practices. While the lawsuit was pending, the Massachusetts legislature moved to exempt BlueHub from consumer protection laws. It was an amendment to a measure with no roll call, no debate. Governor Healey signed that measure into law in 2024, drawing concern from some over political and personal connections between the governor and the head of BlueHub, Elyse, who has donated money to Healey's various campaigns and has a personal relationship with her. We asked the Attorney General about the exemption. She believed that no company in any field, she told us, should be exempt from consumer protection laws. Elyse Cherry, the head of the organization named as a defendant in the lawsuit, says the judge got it all wrong. She joined us in the studio now to explain why, along with a housing advocate who says she saved her own house from foreclosure with a BlueHub mortgage. She's the director of Springfield No One Leaves, Rose Webster-Smith. Rose, Elyse, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jim.
So Elyse, let's start with you. What did the judge get wrong?
Well, let me take a step back first and describe what the Sun Initiative really is, which is what we're talking about, and also what BlueHub Capital is, because that's the entity that really supports this. So BlueHub has been around for 40 years now. We started with $3,500 from the Old South Meeting House Social Action Committee, and we now have $1.6 billion in assets under management. We're in 42 states. We've lent $3.6 billion. We've managed to get other lenders to lend enough to get us to almost $20 billion, and we're completely mission-driven. We exist to help build healthy communities where low-income people live and work, and we support affordable housing and schools and daycare centers and grocery stores and all kinds of things in addition to the work that we do at Sun. So when you ask... I was just saying, in Roxbury alone, we've put in $150 million for thousands of units of housing and to do things like supporting Franklin Cummings Institute. We're completely mission-driven.
How'd the judge get it wrong, Elyse?
Well, I think in several ways. And frankly, I think your discussion is how much the homeowners actually save. So let me explain how this works.
What did I get wrong in this?
There's nothing in there about the savings to the homeowners.
Well, I got nothing wrong. I just said, if you recall, I said that you believe there's benefit to the homeowner, which you'll describe, which you're doing now. So
well, let me do that.
Please.
So let's imagine that somebody has a $500,000 mortgage. In Massachusetts, not very different than what it's about where we are. And the value of their home, the market value is $300,000, right? What we do is we go out, we negotiate with the homeowner, with the lender, the foreclosing lender, who would not negotiate with us and would not reduce principal for anyone but for the fact that we agreed to a shared appreciation mortgage. That was the deal. But the way it works for the homeowner, in my example, let's assume the homeowner who had a $500,000 mortgage now has a $300,000 mortgage. They're completely released from the other $200,000. The other thing to think about here is they start earning appreciation not at 5, but at 3. Mm-hmm. So compare them to their neighbor who simply has their mortgage, their home's down to $300,000 too. They get all the way back up to a $500,000 value. They have zero appreciation. But our homeowner, the Sun homeowner, by the time they get up to $300,000, the full appreciation is $200,000, the difference between 3 and 5. So in my example, they were paying 60% of their mortgage, so they would be entitled to 60% of the appreciation. That means that they are $120,000 ahead of where they would have been.
Did you make that argument to the court? You did, right?
Yes.
They determined, let me quote from the judge. The judge said that argument is meritless. That was the word he used, meritless.
No, I don't think so.
It's on page 46. I have it right in front of me.
But the issue and we spoke with these plaintiffs last week, and I've read all these stories. The issue is not that you were able to save these people's houses. The issue is that they didn't understand what they were going to have to do to refinance, which is a balloon payment. They didn't understand about the second mortgage well enough. Some of them didn't have lawyers with them, and they were told not to talk about the negotiations. And that's what the judge found to be predatory lending, among other things. I mean, this is what the judge found, that you're a predatory lender, even though you may have saved the people's houses.
Well, I disagree with a bunch of that, but let me turn to Rose, actually, who, in fact, not only has a loan from us, but has worked with many people who have loans from us.
You do a lot of housing work, we should say, in Western Mass. It's not just about you, but you have great experience in the field. Tell us what your experience is, Rose.
Yeah, so I actually first applied to BlueHub in 2012. Every phone call I had, every meeting I had, we talked about the shared appreciation mortgage. It was very upfront, very, it for me was to the point where, can we stop talking about it and can we move on? I was post-foreclosure, so I'm actively fighting an eviction. I ultimately didn't get approved. My husband and my income wasn't there in 2012. And so we continued to fight an eviction and applied again in 2015. Again, all throughout the process, we talked about the shared appreciation mortgage. It was explained to me at every single step of the way. It wasn't approved then either. In 2016, and meanwhile, I'm still fighting an eviction. In 2016, we applied again. My husband had gotten a better job, was over the road truck driver. I was working at Springfield No One Leaves, so I had income, and we were approved and ultimately closed in 2017. What I can say about my original closing in 2006, nothing was explained to me. It was sign here, initial here, sign here, initial here. Our closing was almost 2 hours in 2017. Every single document that was put in front of myself and my husband was explained to us. We didn't have an attorney. The person doing the closing explained everything. And if we didn't understand it, they would stop and re-explain it again.
Rose, can I ask you, even though your experience was sounds to be totally appropriate, I assume you're not in any way saying the experience of the plaintiffs in this lawsuit was like yours. If they say it wasn't explained to them and the court determines that it wasn't explained to them, the balloon payment at the end of the shared appreciation, you're not saying you have any knowledge as to whether or not that's true or not, right? You just saw your own experience.
I can't speak to their experience. Okay. I wasn't in the room. I can speak to mine, having gone through it 3 times. And having faced an eviction for 5 years,
Understood.
5 months, and 2 days.
Understood. You know, Elyse, if I can return to another issue, the judge spoke to the fact that this law that we mentioned, the legislature passed and Governor Healey signed, was not retroactive, which would have wiped out some of the claims. We asked the Attorney General after the law had passed if she thought the law was retroactive on the show. She said no. We asked the woman who signed the law, Governor Healey, if she said it was retroactive. She said no. The judge mentions that in your testimony before the legislature, you yourself said it was not retroactive. Yet, days after the legislature passed the law, your lawyers went to court and said the law should be applied retroactively. Isn't that a real credibility problem for your side?
No, I testify that I do not believe the law is retroactive, and I stand by that. We all stand by that.
Your lawyers claimed it was.
What we think, if you let me finish, what we think is that the law simply clarifies and confirms the existing state of the statute, right? We don't think actually it's changed anything at all, and we think that that's one of the places where the judge got it wrong. We don't think it needed to be retroactive.
Your lawyers claimed it was retroactive,
No,
though.
there was a whole discussion about retroactivity. Our lawyer did not claim it was retroactive.
But hold on for a second. This is an exemption from the consumer protection laws. Why should you be exempt from consumer protection laws?
I am so glad you asked that. In fact, nonprofits who are doing work consistent with their mission are all exempt from the consumer protection laws because we are not viewed as being in trade or commerce. So, for example,
but again,
universities...
the judge disagreed with that.
We disagree with the judge.
And the law that was just signed by Maura Healey impacts you only.
Well, let's look at that, too. First of all the law does is clarify that nonprofits in pursuit of their core mission are exempt just as they are today. Secondly, you have to really ask,
It does
why...
not do that, by the way, and you know that since you
That's
said
not-
it.
that's
no,
not
it
the
speaks
case.
to those who engage in shared appreciation.
No, it doesn't.
It does not give broad exemption to nonprofits. It gives
Chapter
there is
93A
exemptions
gives
for
broad exemption to nonprofits
Elyse,
who are clearly
not
in
engaged
pursuit of their
commercial
mission.
activity.
That's
the
right.
judge said that didn't apply to you
We
at
disagree,
all.
and we're
Okay.
appealing,
Okay.
right? So that's on that. But the question here that I find really interesting, right? If we are engaged in a commercial profit-making undertaking, where are our competitors, right? We live in a world in which if somebody comes up with a business model that works, somebody else figures out how to do it faster, cheaper, better. Where are our competitors?
Well, because the action is illegal. That's why there aren't competitors. The court determined you were engaged in predatory behavior.
No,
that's why there are no competitors in the field.
No, the court determined that we were covered by the high price loan statute. And I have to say, this may be the first time in the history of mortgage finance that borrowers come out several $100,000 ahead of where they were before, that is, owing less, and somebody concludes that it's actually high price. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, the thing you mentioned before, the house, it was $500,000. Then you get it down to $300,000, so they owe $200,000 less. But then you sell it back to the homeowners at a 25% profit for you. So why isn't that enough? Why do you have to add on this balloon payment, which the people we had in last week did not understand that they were going to have to pay if they tried to refinance?
Well, some of those folks testified that they in fact understood it, and one of them at least was on Paul Solomon's national show explaining all of this. So I'm not going to comment on what the plaintiffs think or don't think. I'm just going to leave that right there.
But why wasn't the why do you need
because it's
more
not
than that?
enough. We have yet to make any money on this. What we're trying to do is to build a sustainable business over time. But this is a very complex business. We have to get folks to manually underwrite these loans, meaning try to figure out whether the borrower, in fact, can pay or not.
You say you haven't made any profit on this?
That's correct. And that
paid yourself $1 million.
Well, that's an interesting question. My board sets my salary.
No, I understand.
And it sets it consistent with what other people in the city doing similar work
$1 million to run a company that's making no money?
No, I run a company that has $1.6 billion in assets under management. Sun is a small part of what we do.
Rose, you've been left out of this conversation after you told your story. If there's anything you want to add or interject, you are totally free to do it. Don't feel compelled, but you are more than welcome to.
You know, I keep hearing, predatory lending and these lawsuits and stuff. Well, where were we with Bank of America and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? Because I'm sorry, but they're still practicing the same predatory lending that they've been doing for years. I will say this, there's no rhyme or reason why people win in court. And if it wasn't for BlueHub, I actually could have been out on the street. There was no guarantee I was going to win my court case, even though I was on my 5th motion to compel discovery. And so I think some of what we're missing here is the fact that these are owners in distress. For Western Mass, we don't have land trusts. We don't have other alternatives. And if we're pouring all this money into first-time homeownership in the state, but we're doing nothing to protect homeowners.
When we're going to Western Mass, we said next Monday and Tuesday, we should talk to you after this segment, our colleagues, about whether or not you could join us to talk about housing issues in general in the western part of the state. We only have a couple minutes left. Elyse, how do you feel about the Attorney General has proposed a bunch of regulations, you know much better than I, about disclosing what the full potential that you might owe is, disclosing what the balloon payment would be at the end, and also potentially putting a cap on how much could be owed. Do you support what Andrea Campbell is doing?
We asked for regulations. We asked for the Attorney General to complete regulations, to promulgate regulations so that, in fact, there would be certainty. And I think this is the beginning of a long discussion with the Attorney General, and we're perfectly happy to have regulations. If the regulations mean that we can't function in Massachusetts, then we'll continue in the other 10 states that we're in. Could you live with a cap? It depends on how it's written.
Do you work with her? I'm embarrassed. I don't think we asked her. Is this something that's an exchange between you and the Attorney General?
Not just me. They had a hearing, and then they'll take lots of information over time.
Okay.
Sure, absolutely. One thing that I also want to point out, every single one of these plaintiffs went to the Division of Banks to complain about us. The Division of Banks found no fault whatsoever, nor has any other Division of Banks in any of the 11 states in which we think. The judge did, and we think he's wrong.
We appreciate... sorry.
Hold on. I just want to ask you about this legislation that Governor Healey signed about making you retroactive. Did anybody from your organization talk to any of her people? I mean, how did this come about that you got this deal? It doesn't look good because you're a big donor to her. It doesn't look good that...
And there was no debate, and there was no roll call.
Yeah. Whoa. This was in front of the legislature for 3 years.
There was no debate or roll call,
in one particular
on the vote.
Piece. There was 3 years of discussion.
One particular piece was the vote.
How about the hearings? This was well aired.
How many people do you know who pays attention to a legislative hearing other than the immediate people involved?
The
when
legislators.
They voted to amend the bill to include the exemption for you. Again, no roll call, no debate.
How many of those amendments had roll calls?
It's a disgrace.
How many of those amendments in that bill had roll calls?
Rose, is that a defense?
So you could say the same thing for me advocating for foreclosure mediation pilot that got passed.
Rose, can I tell you?
In a bond.
My position is that nothing should be passed by the legislature when there's not full transparency.
We can all have positions. I just want to say we have kept more than 1,000 people in their homes who would have been on the street. Talk is great. We have people
it's not talk. It's a judge's ruling.
We have people in their homes. We're going to appeal the ruling.
Okay.
And in addition to that, half of those folks have refinanced themselves out and are back in the conventional market.
You didn't answer
These facts are
Marjorie's
getting
last
lost.
question.
I just want to get back to that question because, like I said, you've been a big donor to her and other people, and this legislation that was passed, as Jim said, without debate and roll call in the final vote, was signed by her, and it singled you guys out. So what was the communication between you or people that work for you or your company or anybody that worked?
Our communication is primarily with the legislature. Governor didn't need to have us communicate with her. She was way back when we started this at the Attorney General's office, then Attorney General. Yeah. We've had better than 200 referrals from the Attorney General.
So in your long friendship with her, you never talked to Maura Healey about this?
Fair enough. She said the same thing, by the way.
And just one last thing. What really upset me when the plaintiffs came in here and spoke with us about this, that they were told not to talk about the arrangement.
There was a provision in the mortgage. I have no idea how it got there, and it's been taken out. But the mortgage, in fact, is public record. So the idea that you can't talk about it.
Why was that provision in there?
I have no idea. I was shocked when I saw it.
But this is your company.
I know, and I actually read the documents. I have no idea why a provision got into the mortgage.
So someone that works for you just kind of stuck that in there?
It's perfectly possible, but it was on record. So the idea that you couldn't talk about it is kind of, negated by that.
If you proceed with the appeal, please come back. We'd like to talk to you again. Elyse,
I'd be delighted to.
Thanks so much, Rose. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Stick around and talk to our producers. Maybe we can connect next week. Thank you both for your time. We appreciate it.
We have been speaking with Elyse Cherry, CEO of Blue Hill Capital, and Rose Webster-Smith, Director of Springfield No One Leaves, a housing advocate out there. Coming up after this quick break, do we have time for two more things?
Yeah, we do.
We're doing two more things?
We do. Quickly.
Okay, we're doing two more things up next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the T is launching a new effort to fight fare evasion today, with staffers cracking down on riders who try to sneak aboard. With school back in session, the city of Boston is starting a brand new literacy program. And the EPA has sounded the alarm about an increase in malicious cyber attacks targeting American water systems. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and oil changes. Direct Tire and Auto Service, not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com. And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering private cooking events for your next team building activity, family reunion, birthday party, or night out. You can learn more at CambridgeCulinary.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. I forgot why we moved two more things, actually, but we did. So here it is before we talk about little white lies. That's our topic at the end of the show. Marjorie, what's your thing today?
Well, I was stunned reading the Boston Globe on Sunday to read a story by Emily Sweeney that said cocaine levels 50% above the U.S. average. Apparently, they'd started doing this thing out there, testing the water out there for all sorts of things: COVID, influenza, different drugs, methamphetamine, fentanyl, nicotine, codeine, morphine, oxycodone. And Nantucket was nowhere outstanding on either of those things. However, very high on cocaine. So it raises the question, what is going on out there in Nantucket? And will the rich people who leave in September change the content of the cocaine residue?
Why do you find this so amusing?
Well, I just think it's kind of wild. I mean, there's a lot of very wealthy people out there. We know people have these houses like Bill Belichick's house that went for the cottage.
It's like
two
a
bedrooms,
studio,
two bedrooms,
practically.
2 baths, went for what, $3.5 million?
I think. Yeah.
So it's a lot of wealthy people. I guess they're doing a lot of cocaine and having a hell of a time.
My happiest Marjorie's been in weeks. Okay, my one more thing is I want to talk about the latest people to bend down to Trump. And I talk about them because those are people with enough power not to. The wealthiest, other than Elon Musk, tech bros in the world. Here is Tim Cook. Remember Trump called him Tim Apple in the first term? He's the head of Apple. A few weeks after giving Trump that gold stand with the Corning glass apple, listen to how many times, this is in less than 2 minutes, listen to how many times the little sycophantic Tim Cook thanks President Trump. Here it is.
A company called Apple.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Very congratulations. Please.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot to me. I want to thank you for including me this evening. I want to thank you for setting the tone such that we could make a major investment in the United States. I also want to thank you for helping American companies around the world. And so thank you so much for including me.
Thank you is what he meant to say, and he did. Didn't end there. Then there's little Zuckerberg. He's only worth $16 trillion, too. First, you're going to hear Zuckerberg stuttering an answer to a question from Trump. And then if you listen carefully in hushed tones, little Zuckerberg mentions essentially how, I didn't know you were going to ask that question, Mr. President. I'm really sorry. Listen to this one.
How much are you spending, would you say, over the next few years?
Oh, gosh. I think it's probably going to be something like, I don't know, at least $600 billion through 28 in the U.S. Yeah.
It's a lot.
No, it's significant. Sorry, I wasn't ready to do for announcement.
He said I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with.
Babe, that is maybe, let me repeat what he whispered to Trump after that answer where he's going, I'm sorry I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure what the number you wanted to go with was, which means I'll say any number you tell me to. So we played that. We have powerful law firms, powerful universities, multi-billionaire tech guys who might be, a little bit less wealthy if they didn't bow down to this dictator, but because all that matters is the bottom line with these characters, they will do anything. And by the way, if they don't stand up to Trump, what hope is there for everybody else?
Well, that's
disgraceful.
You kind of think if you're a billionaire so many times over, it buys you certain freedom. You can kind of tell people to drop dead if you want to tell people to drop dead. Not true in this situation.
I'm sorry, I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure what number you wanted to go with. What number should I make up that would make you happy, Donald Trump? What a pathetic bunch of loser characters. Those are your tech guys. As you all do your meta thing and you all buy your little Mac computers.
If you're in the cabinet or you're a politician or you're a tech guy, apparently now you have to go around the table and say how wonderful he is.
Thank you.
Anyway, up next, we're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on little white lies. Are they ever okay? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim.
I would never tell a lie.
Well, momentarily,
okay.
I was a little shocked there because I had to read about Jim or never tell a lie Browdy. That's not my understanding. This is BPR and GBH 897, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Okay, welcome back to BPR and Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. I said Marjorie. Did I say Marjorie Egan? Yeah, yes, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Thank you. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. So if there's one thing we know about humans, it's that they lie. But the motives behind those falsehoods vary widely, from an explicit intent to deceive and cause dangerous things to happen. That would, of course, be Donald Trump, to let's call it a more altruistic desire, for example, not to hurt someone's feelings. Marta, you're one of the most decent people I've ever met and an honorable person. I know you admitted this morning at this morning's meeting, even though you tried not to, you have occasionally told a little white lie to get out of a conversation without offending other people. I may have done the same thing. There's this new column in The Guardian refers to these types of lies made in an effort to politely decline an invitation. They call them social lubricants, which I think is great. They help the interaction run smoothly, avoid conflict and pain, at least in the immediate. So is a lie, particularly in pursuit of comfort, a decent thing, or is any lie something that should be avoided at all costs? The lines are open at 877-301-8970. Is it ever appropriate? We didn't even look up today. Could one of you guys look up, why is it called a white lie? It makes me nervous, actually.
Jim, you didn't think of that.
And assuming you do lie, and they say everybody lies on an average of 1 to 2 times a day. Obviously, Trump does 1 to 200 times a day. What kind of lies do you tell? What kind of magnitude? Are they small ones? And why do you tell them? I have a few statistics, by the way, that I looked up when we were doing this thing that I found to be pretty interesting. They are the 21% of people who tell lies, do it to avoid other people.
Correct.
Like you get an invitation to something, and you don't want to say, I'm not coming because I really don't want to be with you, but you make up an excuse like I'm busy. 20% are to tell a joke. I can't read what my... another one, 13% is to impress other people. You lie about who you know and what you've done. I find that to be a little troubling, by the way. But I have to say, the basic notion that if you tell a lie so that you don't hurt somebody else's feelings, which is the primary reason I do, I think it is not only perfectly appropriate, I think it's almost necessary. Why should you be in a position to say to someone something that's going to gratuitously hurt them?
The problem is you have to keep the lying straight, Jim. The problem is, like when you are supposedly telling a lie to avoid hurting someone's feelings, and you tell person A that you got to leave fast to pick up your kids, and you tell person B that you have to go to the doctor's appointment.
Okay,
and you tell person C, you have the Comcast person coming over. It's kind of...
Well, it was, what it was? It was like an aggregate. What happened is I did leave.
Stick to the same lie.
I left early right after the show the other day. It's true, and I had to run out.
Some of the reasons, yeah.
One of our coworkers asked me why I was leaving, and I said I was leaving to go to the doctor, which I often do. And another one said, "Why are you leaving?" And I said, "I have to see the Comcast guy, who I often see." And a third person asked me why was I leaving, and I said I had to pick up my kid. And you made a point this morning, which I can't deny.
Yeah,
I haven't picked up either of my kids in 20 years. But I once picked up my kids.
Yeah, it was a good excuse, when they were little kids.
No, I have no idea why I didn't just say, I don't know what I had to do that day, but I had to do it. But I am a huge, again, you don't have to call about the pathological lying of someone like Trump. Small, as that line is so perfect. I wish I'd come up. It's a social lubricant. It makes life simpler, easier, less painful for everybody involved. You know what I also lie about from time to time? I realize as we're speaking, in addition to getting out of things I don't want to do, which I admit I more than occasionally make up something. When I have bought, I'm not a spendthrift, as you know. I'm not cheap, but I don't spend a huge amount of money. However, when I do buy something, I think
you're quite generous, actually, Jim.
Well, that's nice. When I spend a lot of money on something, I often say the price was lower than it was because I'm embarrassed. Like if I spent $300 for something that, frankly, I didn't really need, I will often say I got it on sale at $99, even though I didn't. Yeah. I mean, is that okay or is that not okay? I guess
I don't know why you would do that.
Because I feel guilt-ridden.
It's probably a hangover from your mother that was worried about how much everything costs. But the classic though is you lie about how somebody says to you that you're at a wedding and they say, "How do you like my dress?" Of course you're going to say,
"That's a perfect one." Of course,
it's a great dress because they're at the wedding. The dress may be awful, but it's too late. Or you go to someone's house and they fix up the house and it's horrible.
But you
say,
example.
"Oh my goodness, things look great in here." What is the point of telling somebody things look awful?
Can I give you a perfect example? I can't believe you thought of that and I hadn't. The perfect example is you asked me one day how I felt. We were doing an event together about an event, and you were wearing the same black dress you've worn to like maybe 150 events in a row. Remember that? And
I wear it over and over.
What did you think of it? And I said, "It's beautiful. I don't think I've seen it before." more than 150 times. 877-301-8970. To cut it short, are white lies, and we'll find out in a minute where the term come from, because I don't know, are white lies okay? You know, I just realized?
What?
You know who the best white liar of all time was, and the worst at the same time? We've told this before, Manny Ramirez. Don't you remember?
Oh, yeah. His
Manny
grandmother
Ramirez, whenever he was a great hitter for the Red Sox, whenever he didn't show up for something on time, his grandmother had died.
Yeah.
And it turns out she died apparently like many, many times, which is whatever.
But you know what the story says? A lot of people, if they don't want to do something, they'll tell a lie. You know, can you come over for dinner Friday night?
That's the biggest one.
Yeah, because I'm doing whatever I'm doing. But this story says that you would be better off, and I think this is worth considering, especially if they're your friends.
Saying what?
Is telling them the truth.
Oh, I know you're
saying, you know, I've worked so hard all week long. All I want to do is Friday is go home and sit in front of the TV and veg out. I'm exhausted. Why not say that?
Okay, you're not a close friend. Can you come over to dinner next Tuesday? We'd really love to spend time with you and Marjorie and Jamie and Zoe and all the whole team. Can you do it Tuesday night? You free?
Well, I think you could. If you don't want to go, you can just come up, say it's a
With a lie.
You can come up with a.
What if you're free? I'm free. I am free. I really don't want to spend any time with you.
I guess the question is, why don't you want to go? If it's because you don't want to spend any time with anybody, that's kind of difficult to say. I can't stand any of you. That's a problem. But if you don't want to go because you've had a tough week or you're tired, you just want to sit home in your pajamas, whatever, maybe you'd be better off saying that instead of making up a story.
In certain circumstances, yes. Anonymous texter says, what white lie did little Jimmy Spencer Browder use to get out of his first date with that shot putter, which she was not, and I never had a date with her.
Not talking about this.
Harriet Heinemann. Exactly. That's what I should say. I'm not talking about this. By the way, the white
She was a
in
shot
white
putter.
lies,
That's what I hear.
according to the Columbia Journalism Review, refers to being free from malignity. So that is a bad expression to use, because the implication is white is free of malignity or evil intent. So we shouldn't use that expression. Let's call them small lies, which. And
then it says you can get into the habit of doing this, like we just talked about, where you tell 3 different lies in like 2 minutes about why you
well,
can't
that one
do
time,
something.
I don't have any idea. They were not lies. The kid thing was a lie.
Yeah, you're either leaving early because you're picking up your kids. The Comcast man is coming to 3 different people within like a minute and a half.
Well, if I had known the other people were listening, I wouldn't have done it. Okay, are any lies ever permissible, even little ones that you intend?
What do you
so
think
that you
my
don't
new
hurt other
haircut?
people's?
You know what? Your hair looks great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lie.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. We're going to get to calls in a minute. You just read that one text, and of course, as impressionable as you are, you totally change your position. Why don't you tell people why you're not coming to dinner? Ask me how your hair looks.
How's my hair look?
I've seen better. Okay, is that okay, or is it better to say? Actually, it looks quite.
Especially
it
if
looks
it's
quite
a close
pretty.
friend of yours, like say it's your spouse or it's your sister
What are
or
you,
your
nuts?
brother. Sometimes I think maybe you'd be better off saying no,
no harm,
don't wear
no
that,
foul.
Don't wear that dress.
No harm.
If you're still home, don't wear that dress. Change the dress.
Okay, Sheila, can I say to you then? Don't wear the black dress again. Let me. I'll tell you
What are you
right
talking
now.
about? It's my Calvin Klein.
Sheila in a
Very
car.
nice dress.
You were first on BPR.
wool.
Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
I love your show. This is a first-time call, but I agree with Marjorie, what she just said. That's what I was calling about. So my friends, my really close friends, and we, crack each other up. But, if we don't like a dress, we're like, yeah, don't wear that tonight. And same thing with my daughter will come down in the morning, and she's like, does this look good? And I'm like, I don't really like it. And she gets mad at me and stomps off. But then when I see her when she comes home from work, I see that she changed. So
yeah,
when it's friends and people that you love, you can tell them the truth because you're really helping them. But then just, somebody random, you wouldn't do that, obviously.
That's actually not a horrible division of decision making. That's a good one, Sheila. Thank you very much for calling. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Yeah, that's when you think, especially if you can fix it before you leave somewhere. You know what I mean? Like if you're already at the event, it's too late to tell somebody their hair looks awful or their dress is terrible. But if you're still home and you can prevent the embarrassment kind of thing, that's the way to go. Jill in Medford, thank you for calling.
When my niece was young, I used to send her stickers because she lived in a different state and they were easy to mail. And I'd send them year after year. And one year she said to me, I don't really like stickers. And I think if she just told me the first time, we could have saves a lot of energy and time.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, Jill. Thank you.
And this happens with people. If you don't tell them who you are and what you want, then what's the relationship about? I mean, it's one thing to tell people they're ugly. It's another thing to say, I don't really want to do that, or I don't, when somebody asks you, what does my hair look like? Do I look okay? You can just say, well, I like the length, I mean, you just find something you like about it or something you can say. I do my best to just get around as far as I can to something I can say positive.
You should be a consultant. That is excellent advice. Jill, thank you for the call. Can we play a little sound?
Yeah, I was going to just read Camille in New Hampshire
please
first.
Do that.
She says, how many people do you think lie when the question is, was it good for you too?
Okay, so have you ever seen the movie The Invention of Lying? I totally forgot.
No.
Our team came up with it. Ricky Gervais, who's a genius.
Oh, I love him.
So this is a movie from 2009. It takes place in this world of Earth where humans never evolved the ability to lie. In this clip, he's on a first date with Jennifer Garner when she gets a call from her mother. Just listen to this. It's great.
It's my mom. I think she's probably checking on the date. It won't take long. Hello? Yes, I'm with him right now. Seems nice. Kind of funny. A bit fat. Has a funny little snub nose. Kind of like a frog in a facial.
Yeah, but...
No, I won't be sleeping with him tonight. Probably not even a kiss. Okay, you too. Bye. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
So, again, if I didn't explain it, nobody has the ability to lie, at least at the beginning of the film, and it's called The Invention of Lying. 877-301-8970 are white lies, we're not going to call them white lies anymore, small lies, except here's an anonymous texter mocking me. Jim, quote, I'm going to boycott Amazon. That was not, we didn't need a drum, whatever it's called. That was not intended as a lie. I intended to boycott Amazon, and it lasted a very short period of time.
Here's Marion Raham. With an invitation, simply say, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to attend. No explanation needed.
Why can't you attend?
She's not revealing why she can't attend.
No, but that's if you're doing a written thing. Let's assume I come up to you. Can you come next Thursday? No, I can't, you say, to follow that. And I say, why?
But I know
we really want you to be there.
But I know
no,
you well.
Okay, then it's arm's length.
I would tell you the truth.
Okay, but
it's
let's
easier.
assume...
When you think about it in the long run,
let's assume it's not somebody you know well. And that person says to you, I'd love you to come over. It's a new coworker. I've just gotten to know you. I really think you're terrific. I think your hair is really good. I love the black dress you wear at every single event. Could you come over for dinner Tuesday night? Are you free?
I'm not free.
What are you doing?
I have to arrange my sock drawer. Haven't you heard that one? I have to wash my hair.
Okay, so, you're a fraud. I mean, in the abstract, it's easy to say. You just tell people the truth. But when it comes down to it, it is really hard in some circumstances. By the way, let's assume it's purely, again, the social lubricant to get you out of a situation quickly.
Yeah.
You didn't really... How did you cause harm if you tell a small untruth to somebody when they invite you into something and you just say, I'm busy, when you're not?
According to this shrink person, lying can become a habit and a default way of operating in the world that has consequences for relationships close and not so close. Regular deception erodes others' trust in us as well as our trust in ourselves.
Well, actually, that's not...
How'd you like that,
That's
Jim?
not horrible.
Okay.
That's actually... No, I mean, I hate the expression slippery slope, but it's a slippery slope kind of thing. If you find those convenient and appropriate, how do you graduate to not Trump-like lies, but larger lies?
Well, one of the other theories is if you lie about little things, you lie about big things.
Do you believe that? Do you say that's true?
I think that's absolutely true.
I don't think that. I find myself to be a pretty honest person.
You do?
And I lie about...
It's not what I hear.
By the way, can you finish this? The Comcast guy is coming over. Wait, no, it's the doctor. And my kid is on the...
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how many told me you're picking up your kids.
By the way, can I tell you something? I want to come clean right now.
You told me that a million times.
I'm going to do this. I really feel guilty about this.
Yep.
I've been saying that to you for, like 30 years?
Yeah.
I don't have any kids. I really feel... I have a need... I actually do. I do. Mike in Swansea.
Mike in Swansea.
Hey there, Mike. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
I do think that there's a place for small lies in polite society. Good example being when you ask the question, does this dress make me look fat?
Yeah.
Or how did you enjoy the Christmas fruitcake that I gave you for the 10th time in a row.
Well, see, that one I think I could tell the truth about with the humor in my
That's
voice.
the fruitcake.
But I have asked people, by the way, do I look fat in this outfit?
Do you want them to tell you the truth?
No.
You don't?
Well, no.
Because I think if you were at home before you left, then you could change your shirt or your jacket or whatever. But Mike, what do you do when somebody says, does this dress make me look fat?
Oh, I was married for over 35 years, and the answer was always no.
Okay. I mean, if there's nothing you can do about it, I guess then you do have a weight issue. But if you can make it look better, that's the thing. You got to tell somebody at home these things before they leave and make a fool of themselves.
Fine. Thank you for your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Here's an anonymous texter who says, Sorry, I won't be able to make it. I'm waiting in line for tickets to BPR at the library that night. That's a pretty good one, actually.
Okay. And this person talks about how these elaborate lies people made up. Food poisoning is a big one. People talk about that a lot.
What do you mean?
They can't come over because they can't
I
do
have
something.
Food poisoning?
Food poisoning. Yeah, because
that's a stretch.
No, because you have food poisoning, you recover it from it quickly.
Oh, I see.
It's not going to.
Well, why don't you just say you have a headache? You recover from that quickly, too.
Well, that's not as dramatic.
Oh.
Because you just take an Advil for a headache or something like that. You could take Tylenol, but RFK Jr. doesn't like Tylenol anymore, apparently.
Apparently not.
Okay. 877-301-8970. Justin in Newton. What do you think, Justin?
Hello there.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I've been lying my whole adult life.
Good for you.
Okay. And why is that, Justin?
And I do it to help society.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with a severe speech impediment, and it's created a unique accent. So people ask me every year in my adult life, where are you from? And if I tell them it's from an impediment, they disagree with me and they get upset. But if I ask them to guess, I say, wow. I said, do you read mysteries? You're very deductive. And they feel very good about themselves.
So is your name really Justin, Justin?
I'm sorry?
Is your name really Justin?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that was the truth. Justin, thank you for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Anonymous texter. You start things that take on a life of their own.
Is it more about the shop?
How do you respond when someone says, how handsome do I look in this dickie? New listeners, when we have new listeners, they probably have no idea what we're talking about.
We did a whole segment once about the dickie. We should do it again pretty soon.
Yeah.
And the dickie, if people don't know, it's kind of like this thing that went down on your chest you would wear underneath sweaters, right?
Sort of like when it's a smaller version. When you're eating a lobster, and you put a little lobster bib on. It's like a smaller version of that, except in material, and you'd wear it under a shirt. I know it sounds ridiculous, but by the way, they still sell them because after the first. What are you laughing about? No.
Somebody just said we should do it again soon. The dickie segment, Marjorie. Every segment we've done for months is about the dickie.
That's a very good point.
Aiden pointed that out. We have a lot of listeners who are sick of hearing about dickies, but a lot of listeners who are not sick about.
It's the only reason some people listen.
Yeah. Sam from Fairhaven says, Jim, on a daily basis, you frequently use the word fabulous to describe several things, such as a book, a musical performance, food, etc. I've often wondered if all these accolades were true and sincere.
By the way, that's a legitimate question.
Sam.
Can I tell you that?
Yeah.
I generally have a notion, since we are not in the book criticism business, nor are we in the food criticism business, if we don't like food or we don't like a book or we don't like a play, we generally won't do it. I'm not like a theater critic.
Yeah.
If I saw a play that I thought was horrible, in all likelihood, we wouldn't do it. And if we do it, Sam from Fairhaven, it's probably fabulous. So there you go. But it's a very legitimate question.
Here's an interesting one. It's not complicated, says a texter. What they say is, I'm sorry, I already have plans, which is true. I have plans to spend time at home alone.
Wow. What are your plans? That's the problem. Follow-up. You have a real difficult situation when you have follow-up.
Yeah, follow-up. That's true.
Yeah.
What are you planning?
I think what you say, and I've thought about this since this segment, you say, I'm sorry, I'm busy, and I will take no further questions. That's what I think you have to say when someone invites you.
You say no comment.
No further comment.
I'm taking the fifth.
Not talking about this.
Exactly. That is, Jordan really knows how to handle this, actually. We should hire her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Here's a Not a very good answer, but the texter says it's a great answer. When someone asks how you look, if you look good in the dress, you say, no, it isn't the dress.
Oh, that's not funny. That's exactly my point. That is exactly my point. And now that is an honest answer in that particular circumstance.
Yeah.
You think that's a good thing to say to somebody?
No, it very much hurt their feelings.
Of course it would.
But if they're home, you could change things before you...
What, are they going to lose 12 pounds before the event?
No, but didn't you ever say, I mean, I know I said this with my children, maybe you shouldn't wear that. If we were already out the house and we're at the event, but if
you say out the house?
Out of the house.
Oh, out of the house.
But if it's before they go and you see something that you think is inappropriate.
How many times are you going to say it's okay to say these things in the house?
Well, it is.
It's not that hard to be honest with people you live with or you're very close to.
What are you talking about?
Absolutely.
How many people are honest with their spouses?
None. Okay, I forgot that part of it. TJ in Providence. Providence, yeah, you're next.
Hi, TJ.
Hello there, TJ. What's going on?
Hey, hi. Can you hear me?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. So one of the comments I wanted to have on this was there's a huge distinction between actually lying to somebody and withholding information or just not commenting on something or rephrasing something or omitting information. And there's also a distinction between being honest and being brutally honest. So when someone says, do I look fat in this? You can say, well, I think there might be a better option out there, or maybe contain versus saying, oh, yeah, you look fat.
Yeah, great point.
That's really important factors. And I think when we get into this distinction of white lying and what harm does it do, one of the issues you have there is you don't know how someone's going to take it later on. So if you say, I can't go out tonight, I have food poisoning, and then the person sees you out later.
That is a very fine point.
That's a problem.
That is, TJ, that was a very thoughtful call and helpful. Thank you. Here's a clip from Shrek 3, where Pinocchio is able to not lie his way out of telling the truth about Shrek's location.
You can't lie. So tell me, puppet, where is Shrek?
I don't know where he's not.
You're telling me you don't know where Shrek is?
It wouldn't be inaccurate to assume that I couldn't exactly not say that is or isn't almost partially incorrect.
So you do know where he is?
On the contrary, I'm possibly more or less not definitely rejecting the idea that in no way, with any amount of uncertainty, that I undeniably do or do not know where he should probably be.
Who voiced Pinocchio? That person was great.
I don't know.
Do you guys know?
I don't
Do you know,
know.
Jared, who voiced Pinocchio in Shrek 3?
Here's one more before we get to Jared. I used to work with a woman who absolutely did not lie, little or big lies. She was asked to go to a company function to join folks. When she was asked to go to a company function to join folks after work, whatever, her answer was, I always work with you folks. I don't want to be with you in my off time. And I love this woman.
Oh, my God.
You find
Jared,
that horrible?
I really love working with you. I do not want to be with... So, by the way, Cody Cameron, who I'm embarrassed to say I don't know.
Pinocchio voice?
Is the Pinocchio voice, which was great.
Okay.
So are you like a small lie teller? If it's to... The expression we borrowed from somebody is a social lubricant, meaning
Yeah,
no
I kind of
pain,
like my
whatever.
dress.
Yeah.
That's
Are
brave
you?
that you would. No, that's a nice summer dress.
Yeah.
No, here's my rule. Yes or no, rather, is a complete sentence. So you try to get out that way. Or yes, I guess, is a complete sentence without having to offer an excuse. If you can do a yes or no answer. But then, yeah, if it's going to hurt somebody's feelings, then
I know,
you have
that's
to
tough.
find a way around it.
Especially if you're already there.
Yeah.
You know, if
Oh,
it's-
my God.
Okay.
Enough with that home
That's
versus already at the
true.
thing.
It's true.
So your rule of thumb is if somebody's home, you tell them the truth. If they're at the event, you lie to them. Is that where
it's
you
too late
are?
to do anything about it. And they've shown up in a ridiculous dress. Why tell them they're already there? If you're home, you can say, don't wear that.
Or if you're at the party, you just look over their shoulder and say, oh my God, is that Oprah? Who's here? And then you're gone by the time.
Oh.
And then they forgot that they even asked you to comment on their
That's
clothing.
a good one.
Yeah.
He's got the techniques down.
Yeah.
You have to dodge and weave.
What's that thing? What's that thing where you leave a party? We did a show on this.
The Irish goodbye?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what
love
I
that.
do all the time.
That's the best.
only way to
We
do
got
it.
to do that. We haven't done that in a couple of years.
Just
We'll
slip
do it
out the
soon.
door?
Exactly.
Oh, I never not do it.
Okay.
I hate saying goodbyes.
I know. And people don't really notice.
What's the
you're
opposite
gone.
called when you never leave? There's an expression.
That's a Jewish goodbye.
Oh, that's a Jewish. That's right.
I've never heard that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're leaving for a half an hour.
So don't send complaints. Send them to Jared. What are you doing on your show there?
So we're going to be talking to Ben Shattuck about his book-turned-film that opens this week, The History of Sound.
Oh, my God, we loved it. We loved it.
I loved it.
And Marianne Leone's book was a riot. I just loved it. She's so talented.
She's great.
Yeah.
Husband's
because
very
of Chris
talented,
Cooper's
too.
in the. I was like, how did
Chris
we
Cooper.
get to
Yeah, The
Marianne
History of
Leone?
Sound.
Because he's in it, of
He
course.
is also incredible.
Yeah, very talented couple.
Yes.
Okay, what else you got?
And then David Barron about his new book, The Martians, the true story of an alien craze that captured turn-of-the-century America. This is fascinating. There was this whole rapturous notion about Mars that happened in the Gilded Age, and part of it was fueled by a Boston Brahmin who is an amateur astronomer who took facts that weren't necessarily facts and made people believe that there was life on Mars. It's really interesting. And then Veronica Robles will be here about Mexican Independence Day. I don't know if you've ever seen or met her. She leads an all-female mariachi band, and they are so much fun.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And she presides over her own center, too.
We'll be listening. 2 o'clock. That's 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
I don't like
for
your
Jared
outfit,
Bond.
Jared.
It's
just want to let you
so
know.
interesting to listen to you both every day.
That's a good one.
Okay, we're done.
Jared
but
ever
thank
gets
you
a show, we'll listen
very
to him.
much for tuning in. I think he believes he has several shows, doesn't he? Many shows under his belt. Okay. You can keep up with us 24/7 wherever our podcast, or check out our TikTok page, Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library speaking with CNN Chief National Correspondent John King, our media maven Sue O'Connell, Boston Globe travel writer Christopher Muther. We haven't talked to him in a while. I'm very excited. Trenni Casey from NBC Sports Boston.
Oh, we're going to talk to her about the woman at the Phillies game who stole the baseball from the little birthday boy.
Oh, yeah. If you haven't seen that, look it up online.
Google the video.
Yeah, Google the video. That was terrible. Okay, we want to thank our crew, our long-suffering crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Brad Lewis, who ran our YouTube stream today. Our engineer is John LaClaw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna.
Can I tell you something?
Yes, Jim.
If that woman had taken the ball from the birthday boy when he was home, that would have been okay. But once he...
I think you missed my point.
I don't
There's
think I
nothing you
missed your
can
point at all.
do
You made it
to
like
fix
12
it.
times.
Well, I thought it was important.
Show's
It's too
almost
late
over.
to try to fix it. Anyway, stay tuned to the Culture Show with Jared Bowen. It starts immediately after us. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks again for tuning in today.
Bye.
Hope you can tune in tomorrow. Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting the opening of the Carriage House at the Elms, a new museum cafe featuring elevated New England classics and farm-to-table fare. Also available for private events and catered receptions. NewportMansions.org. Looking for a little mystery to start your week? Well, now you can spend Monday night with your favorite detectives as they search for clues. Catch Midsummer Murders at 8 and Foyle's War at 9, tonight on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org.